Hello and welcome to the Captain's Table, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Berserker01 Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender here at the AstroPub, your space within a Twitch. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. We got a good one for you. I brought people here. We're going to talk about Star Citizen stuff. For those of you wondering why I might be a little off, is because that's how much time I have left in the stream, and I currently have been streaming for 10 hours. So, and that will go up. That number above my head will go up every single time someone subscribes, puts bits in the chat, or donates. So
make it happen.
Oh Lord!
Yeah,
what have you done? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we won't have to stream that long, but it will be a thing.
Can we drop some subs for Paul? Drop a few, a couple in chat.
Come on, don't torture him.
Coming your way,
man. I'm not going to dance in the middle of all of this, though. We're also subscribed. I have to kind of mention this, that we're thank you, Mr. Tomato. We're also subscribed, this is also sponsored by Factor, which is a fantastic meal program. If you haven't had a chance to, it is a program where they send you fresh meals that you refrigerate. You put it in your fridge. They last for about 7 days, and all you got to do is stick them in the microwave, run them for about 3 minutes, and it's good to go. I've used them in the past. They reached out to offer to sponsor it, so I said yes. So if you want to check it out for yourself, you can use my code, which I'll leave in the description, as well as it's in the chat. If you had !factor in chat, and you'll get the code, and you'll get 50% off of your first order with it, which is a pretty good deal. With that being said, as Tomato decided that everyone should now everyone is doing donations and stuff,
give him more time.
Let's do introductions. I'm going to start with Axis. Axis, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
I'm Axis 0096. I stream on Twitch and YouTube primarily, and I typically cover Star Citizen, trying to, make my own way as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's at Axis 0096 on Twitch and YouTube?
The uppercase version here is my YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. The lowercase version is my Twitch handle.
Okay, awesome. And then Tree, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
Hi, I'm Tree0311. Many of the pubbers are probably familiar with me. They've been not my first time. Glad to be back. I produce 2 podcasts. The first is the Pathfinders podcast with Nazareth and myself. And we follow the development of Star Citizen in detail. The monthly reports, the roadmap and progress tracker updates. And then we also do deep dives into various features and technologies as they're developed by CIG. So Star Citizen and Squadron 42. And then the second podcast is Armchair Admirals and Generals. Pathfinders is usually 3 times a month. We usually do 3 episodes. And then Armchair Admirals and Generals, usually every other month is about how often we can get together. The holidays have been weird. The next podcast will be Pathfinders tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on my Twitch, which is just Tree0311 at Twitch, and then same thing on YouTube. And then my Twitter, because we don't call it X, is Tree0311-SC. Been a bit of a hiatus for the last 6 weeks because A, the holidays, but B, found out that the wife and I we knew we were pregnant back in October. We found out at the end of November that we're having twins.
What?
So if you remember that, yeah. Very excited, but also a little bit overwhelmed for a while now. And so we're beyond excited, beyond happy. But if you remember that part of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air song where my life got flipped, turned upside down, yeah, it's been that. And so we having to buy a bigger house at a time when moving and buying a bigger house is not the greatest idea, but needs must, and we're making it happen. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody in chat. Really appreciate it. Love all you guys. Yeah, just glad to be back to doing the podcast and streaming and following Star Citizen. And I stream when I'm not on a hiatus because of life events. I stream pretty regularly, not only doing the podcast but also I do a lot of co-op games. So we were just talking about before we got started. We were talking about Helldivers and Helldivers 2. Yeah, so if you want a fresh cup of ice cold liberty, come hang out on stream with me. We'll be playing Helldivers 2. I'm playing Helldivers 1 leading up to it. Starship Troopers Extermination, Deep Rock Galactic. Play a lot of those games. Love hanging out with the community, playing games. And everything I do is for charity. I take no money for myself. All monetization goes directly to stackup.org. We raised, between my monetization and donations, we did almost $2,000 this last year. So that's looking forward to seeing what we can do next year. Oh,
What?
everyone's saying, Paul, you're muted, but I can hear you fine.
I muted myself. Yeah, my bad.
Oh.
I muted for them.
What is this?
So yeah, I was gonna say there's a game made by X Dice Devs.
Are you talking about Hyperspace?
I think Hyperspace is the name of it. Yes. It's
Obsidian
crazy.
Ant just covered it.
Yeah, they've been very quiet about this game.
Yeah.
They don't have a YouTube at all. Like they've just been kind of posting on their own blogs. It's like four or five. No, it's 2 X Dice Devs and maybe a handful of other people who are making this game.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wait a second.
It's on the front.
Oh my God. There was somebody in my chat back in like August or July, and they were like, Tomato, you don't know. I know the information, but something's going to kill Star Citizen this December. I think this is what they were talking about. I think they had said this name.
The thing
They're
about this
hoping to go into early access the end of this year. I've been following it since day one.
The cool thing about it, the cool thing about it is that on the page it says, this looks like Star Citizen, and they basically said, we're not Star Citizen. We're not trying to be Star Citizen, which is cool. It's really good.
Obsidian Ant just did a video covering it. He did a really good job. So I recommend checking that out. Everybody in chat.
Hyperspace.
Cool.
Check it out. They're really good. There's some really good demo stuff that they've done. So,
okay.
Yeah, I've tried the when they've done alpha tests. I've tried it out a few times, and the premise is very cool. It's very what's that Void Crew? And then Void Crew, but more. Yeah, really.
And it's also more narrative focus, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
There's actually more of a story behind the whole thing, like what you're.
This looks cool.
Yeah, there's a fleshed out universe to it. Yeah,
and it's PVE. It says, huh?
All PVE. It's all just co-op experience.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
On my radar now.
Yeah, it's on your radar.
Oh, what? Wait, these people made It Takes Two?
Yes.
Or they've worked on it?
They worked on it. They worked on Battlefield. They've worked on a lot of stuff, and. I started seeing some of the animations once I found out they worked on Battlefield. I'm like, I can see it now. I can see the dice animation in there.
Do they have overpriced ships?
No, sadly. Thank you, Dalinar. Anyways, check it out. That's the completely different game. But if I'm a big space game fan, and so same as so is Tree, so is Space Tomato on No Axis as well. So it's a good game to keep your eye on. So
cool.
Speaking of Tomato, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
I make YouTube videos mostly. I have 2 channels right now, Space Tomato and Space Tomato 2, and those put out, Space Tomato is kind of like shorter form, more prepared stuff. Space Tomato 2 is podcasts and stream replays and longer form content. I stream on Twitch. I have a couple podcasts that go out. Those are on the second channel. And we have our org, GII. I see the folks in chat. What's up, GII? We got Toes Gang in here, and they'll probably drop Toes. Don't worry about that. Don't pay it too much attention.
don't think about it too much.
If you want to ask questions, don't ask questions. Just leave it as it is.
It's just gonna be even weirder for the people in the audio format because they don't know what are you talking about.
They can just imagine pictures of Toes in chat, like a literal Toes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a community. I make content online, and we do a lot of Star Citizen stuff. And now I'm gonna look at Hyperspace too, because that game looks cool.
Yeah, it looks good. Check it out. There's a bunch of videos for it now too. So you just have to like know where to go. You have to like dig through the right locations and find it. Their website has
a secret society. I see. I get you.
Somebody
told me. I can't believe that I actually. They were like, "It's the secret. It's gonna kill Star Citizen." I was like, "Dude, what? What could possibly be a secret that comes out and does that?"
Yeah, this is
Hyperspace.
Star Citizen. I mean, I don't think so, but I'm excited for it. Since someone told to me, I was like, "Oh, really? This is cool."
Yeah, that is cool. I want to check that out.
So, getting onto the topic itself for the day. Today, what we're going to talk about specifically is we're going to be focusing on the two major kind of pillars, some of the last pillars of the game of Star Citizen's development, which have been talked about a lot. And I kind of want to go over like a lot of the details about them, which of course I'm referring to the replication layer separation and server meshing. And so I'm going to start with you, Space Tomato, on this one. The first question I have is, what do they actually do? Do you have any insight into like what they actually do? What is replication layer and what is server meshing?
I really like the graphic that they used back in 2021, I think it was, CitizenCon. That was, I think, every time I think of all of this technology they talk about, that's what I go back to. So if you want to graphically understand this as we talk about it, I would suggest going back and looking at that because I think they do a good job. They show that the entity graph that they've been working on this whole time is like the actual true long-term storage database of everything that is Star Citizen. It'll be updated, it'll keep everything true, and it'll always just be sitting in this functioning state. Mm-hmm. And then you have us on our computers at home, freaking clickety-clacking it away, forgetting our helmets and dying and all that kind of nonsense. And then you have servers somewhere off in some farm somewhere, hopefully close enough to each other that we don't all have to deal with latency problems. And those also are needing to communicate with both that entity graph, the database, and us, the people at home. So rather than thinking about that physical connection, the sort of nebulous network connection that they have is the replication layer. It keeps everything in sync between the servers, their database, and us. It replicates all of the data and keeps it separate from the actual servers that are running, so that if servers crash, the data is still going in this replication layer between, say, the client and whatever that long-term storage is, just frozen, as we've seen with this whole crash protection. And then it reconnects to servers and the things start flowing. It's like a smattering way of describing it from what I've seen. Yeah. But I'm sure I'm missing some detail there.
Tree, do you have anything to add to that in your experience?
Yeah, the only thing have you ever worked in an office with that one person and all they seem to do is just forward emails to different groups? That's what the replication layer is that person that is just constantly, and they take a piece of information from one person and then they send it out to everyone in a group that needs to be updated on that piece of information. That's what the replication layer is, that person. And basically what they are doing is communicating entity state between, like Space Tomato said, the entity graph, the servers, and the connected clients, us. And with the way they're doing it now, the replication layer will treat servers like clients. You know, they're connected clients just like players are. And one thing, you know, and probably shouldn't get too far off into it, but I had a really long conversation with Benoit at CitizenCon, and the way he talked about it is the replication layer is literally in the same room. If it's not on the same physical machine as the actual virtual server that's running the game, it can be in the same room. And so the reason it works so well is because it's lossless communication between the entity graph, the actual game server running the simulation, the only thing that you have any sort of communication loss with is the player connected clients, and that's really going to depend on your own connection and your distance. And so that's why it works, is because they're able to move that replication layer off the server, the virtual server running the game, and so that way that server isn't having to run the logic of all the commands of communicating that information to the entity graph, to the clients. It's essentially another virtual service doing that. And that's why it will allow for the servers to perform better, because it's offloading a task into a different service.
So I'm going to summarize a little bit of this, is that, like someone said in the chat, it's the Star Citizen secretary. It's basically the background information that's transferring all of the information around to all of the different places as a way of maintaining the long-term persistence, the location, everything, that all the information that needs to be happening to be sent to the various locations to make the game happen. You know, how far is this enemy from the player, what's in the room with the player, and so it stores all that information so that if in the middle of you having an epic fight with the Ninetales and Siege, and suddenly the server dies, all that information is saved on the replication layer and then can be streamed back in, even though the server has died. That when they boot up the gameplay server again, it can stream it back in. Am I right?
Yeah, it's like the RAM of the Star Citizen universe.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So, Axis, do you have anything else to add to this?
So it's basically like a buffer. You know, like a buffer. It's like a safety net that prevents data loss. That's what I'm trying to get. I'm not very tech savvy.
Yeah. Okay, we'll use you as a way of being like, does this make sense to you, Access?
Hey, I'm not tech savvy. I'm not tech savvy either, man.
Hey, I'm
regurgitating.
I'm trying to, guys.
Yeah.
I've just followed it in detail for long enough that I can regurgitate it and sound savvy.
Like savvy. Yeah. I described you as the most knowledgeable layman on this technical topic that I know. There's a lot of great people. You actually had a recent podcast, Tomato, with two folks who were like kind of more technical. One of who just recently started doing videos. Who I've watched some of their videos, which is great on kind of like because they're actual. They are like Benoit. They have that experience, and they've actually kind of worked in that field. But, yeah,
they are tech savvy.
Yeah. So, and when that's on Monday, is that coming out? So it's gonna be coming out. A couple days
that'll be out on Monday. Yeah.
So check
and
it out.
It's an exciting one because there's a lot of stuff that's in there that I honestly couldn't regurgitate to you anyways. They talk in great detail from their own backgrounds, and it's interesting stuff.
It's always fun to listen to them talk because I've know from experience that a lot of times those people, even in the industry, are considered like magicians. Like they can just talk. Like they know how to talk to the machine spirits and soothe them and can coerce them out into the open. You know, I've heard tales of all of the experts at CIG and how good they are, and like I've seen them in action and seen them like huddled around a computer at CitizenCon. I was just like, when I saw that, I was just like, this is insane. The amount of intellect right here that's dealing with this one problem is nuts. It's it was quite insane to see, because I've heard of all those folks before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know the correct prayers to the Omnissiah, and Amazon hasn't delivered my, the what are those things called? The hanging and that has the smoke coming out.
The incense burners. The incense.
The tech priests are always waving in front of a cogitator, and I've been playing too much Rogue Trader.
So good, so good. All right, so let's go over to the next one. And I'll start with you on this one, Shree. What is locked behind these tech, like server meshing and replication layer? What kind of gameplay, or is this sort of the thing that's like preventing gameplay from happening? Is this just a minor inconvenience? Is there anything that we would see come out? Like why should people really care about this technology? Because a lot of people have talked about things like, why hasn't CIG just released Pyro? They have Pyro. They can just release Pyro. Like why do we have to worry about this server meshing thing. Does it really need server meshing, and does server meshing really need these replication layer splits and everything?
Yeah. So with the replication layer, it manages entity state, and entities are everything in the game. Your characters made up of entities, your ships are made up of entities, locations are made up of entities. And so right now, a single server is having to not only manage the simulation of the Star Citizen universe, Stanton, it's also managing any changes to state of entities within the game. As you're going about playing the game, moving things around and doing stuff, you're changing the state of entities. And so if you've ever done the R underscore display info thing, you can see the entity counts. Well, right now we are bottlenecked in terms of development because we can't increase entity counts anymore. So we can't. CIG is very subtle about it, but they are constantly moving things in and out of what actually is on a fresh server, for the game. For us to test it, because this is the hard limit, and maybe they'll do some optimizations and that limit moves up and up and up. But if we remember, was that 2 years ago now when they got rid of Delamar and Levski in order to add Crusader?
It was much longer.
No, it wasn't that long.
That was when they brought in Microtech, no?
No, it was when they brought in.
No, it was for Crusader.
It was when they brought in Crusader.
Yeah.
It was 2020 or 2021. It was one of the two. So.
Mm-hmm. So if you think about that, if you think about how when we did the Pyro playground at CitizenCon, and there was only three planets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a certain amount of the stations, they built Pyro around the idea of server meshing and the separation of the replication layer in order to be able to have a lot more entities within the geographical star system, but that star system would be divided up amongst different servers. And so in order for the game to simulate all of Pyro at once, you have to have multiple servers running it because of the base number of entity counts just at start. And then to also have Pyro connected to Stanton, for Stanton to have more things added to it, like our new UGFs that are coming. Mm-hmm. Those, I don't see those coming to the game until we get the beginning of static server meshing, and they're able to split a server in half, because that's a lot more entities for those great big locations. And so that's where the bottleneck is they can't expand the both the breadth of the universe, but also the density of locations in the universe, objects in the universe, until we have server meshing. And they can't do server meshing until we have the separation of the replication layer. So we're if you're talking about the content of the universe, we have a big bottleneck there based off of these things, but also in terms of gameplay, when you're and we always joke about AI performance and how goofy the AI are, and it's really limited because of server performance. The functionalities that the AI can perform and what they're capable of is limited by the server performance. Well, we can't get better server performance until we're able to split up what's on the game server, what's in the simulation, across more workers, more servers, and the replication layer. So the good thing, and this again comes from my conversation from Benoit, is we already know what the sort of upper limit is on a server in terms of a number of connected players, and as well as the number of entities that a server can simulate and update on a reasonable level. So they know where they need to start subdividing in terms of load, because it's not a physical line in the universe. It's just this is the upper limit on how many things a server can update in terms of players and entities. And what Benoit told me, he's like, we don't know what the upper limit is on the replication layer. We don't know if we can have the replication layer connected to 8 different servers and 400 clients. We don't know we don't know where that number is. He's like, that's part of the reason we're working so hard to separate the two is so we can work on finding that limit, because they need to find that limit in order to continue working on dynamic server meshing, because they know where they need to go. What, server gets to this point. Okay, now we need to split it up between 2. They don't know where that point is with the replication layer yet, because we haven't found it. And so that's what that next step is on the road to dynamic server meshing, is finding out, okay, how quickly, how much load can a replication layer handle? So what's really interesting to me, and that's something that I didn't realize because they haven't really conveyed that as a problem in all their documentation or talks about server meshing, is we don't really know what those roadblocks are in too great detail on the way to dynamic server meshing, but we do know on the way to static server meshing, which is just a new fresh game universe. The way they've planned it right now is Stanton split in two with 2 servers, Pyro split in two with 2 servers, one replication layer to rule them all. That's the first version of static server meshing.
You don't think it's going to be one server per system?
This is just based off that. If you remember that infographic that was in the, it was in the.
Oh, back during that ISC last year.
Yeah. It was the letter from the chairman from May of 2022, where they talked about that plan initially is for 4 servers, 2 for 4 servers managing the 2 systems. And so they never spelled it out saying, exactly, maybe 1 Stanton, 3 Pyro, 2 for each, whatever. But and this is speculating, I'm thinking that the reason that they might split it in 2 is because they want to add in those big new UGFs. And in order to do that, we need to be able to subdivide Stanton, but then, and then they'll continue to subdivide and so on. But so there's a lot locked behind it.
I was gonna say that you also have like the Aaron Halo. Like a lot of miners know about the Aaron Halo, but if you don't, Aaron Halo is supposed to be a physical blocker, and there are supposed to be specific gate stations that exist between all of the different ports on the Aaron Halo, which are these massive mega structures designed to clear out an area to make trade happen. And those themselves are like not only gameplay that it wants to be implemented, but they're going to have AI. And this is the other thing is to keep in mind is that it's kind of like a cup full of water, right? This is a server. It has a certain limit which water it can fill up to. And when you server mesh, basically what you're doing is you're decreasing the amount of water that's going to go into the bottle, each cup. Yeah. So it because it's splitting that water that would normally be for the entirety of Stanton system now into 2 different portions of Stanton system. So now they can add more, which also may increase player cap because now they can replicate more information. They can have players deal with more problems in the areas that they're at, or interact with more of those entities and change them as they go through. So,
chat, if you have, Paul, if you want to mention the whole questions and chat thing, if they want to start saying, because I see a whole bunch of questions. And
if you have questions, feel free to put in chat. Feel free to, I'll put them from twofold. I'm going to put it in YouTube because YouTube has been complaining that I've not been paying attention to them enough.
The tubes.
Yes, I can't neglect the tube. So I'll put it in. There's a Q&A. I'm going to start the Q&A. So all you have to do is go to the Q&A section and ask the questions there. And if you're on Twitch, there's a little coin icon at the very bottom. You click that and you click the question, cat and kid question, and redeem it, and then type your question in there, and feel free to answer that. Axis, do you have
Maverick,
any questions?
I said UGFs just because just like how I still call it Twitter, not X. Yeah. Just because CIG wants to change the name doesn't mean I'm ready for change.
Yeah. I'm
old and inflexible.
Axis, is there any questions you have so far, or do you have anything to add about your own information about like why we need this stuff for going forward?
Well, one of the things that's locked that Tree probably knew I was going to bring up is larger ships that are more complicated, or drones. Things that are tied behind server meshing, like the Carix drones, or range finding, things science related, very complicated things. Even capital ship combat, like with the Polaris and Idris. Yeah. Those are going to be very taxing on our current servers.
They already are.
I mean, the current Polaris is a 24 person, aka 24 entity, just by themselves, object container, basically, is how I look at the Polaris. But that's not including all the sub stuff that comes with the player. So.
Okay. Tomato, is there anything else you want to add? Like, why? What's gated? Like, why do we need these technologies for Star Citizen?
The Star Citizen's kind of unique with the whole. You have a loading screen, load into the game, and then everything kind of happens at the same time, right? You can't pause, you can't go away, you can't stop. Like nothing ever stops to load; it's always going. And one of the best ways I think somebody has ever described server meshing to me was Panic Switch. He's a friend. He's part of our community. He came on the podcast, and he does some of this stuff in a different part of the industry. But the way he described it was server meshing being like the next generation of loading screens. In that this is a new way for games to actually function as opposed to a feature that's being made, and that other companies will figure out ways to use server meshing for their own, specific needs. And this is just CIG's way of using what essentially could be the next version of a loading screen to run their game how it's supposed to. And, when you think about it that way, it makes a lot of sense. This is a very detailed game. It's supposed to be very large. They're trying to build it without loading screens. They have to have some sort of technology that makes that possible. And, this doesn't come with all the detail and tech explanation. Tree gave you that.
Yeah.
But I think as a simplified way of understanding why it's useful, I like looking at it that way. And then you talk about the difference between static and dynamic. And Tree was talking about how the system is broken up into predefined locations. Axis was talking about how capital ship gameplay will be useful. And you can see how it crosses over from being you split up one star system into 10 to, hey, an Idris just jumped in, that needs its own server now, so dynamically spawn a server to cover that ship. So like I think in the larger topics, it's really easy to see why server meshing would be useful. For everything else though, honestly, it just comes down to how bad the servers run, like what True was saying. At the end of the day, it doesn't even matter if you can put 1,000 people into one ship. It's just going to be nice that the game itself is running better. And a lot of the problems that we have with the game won't be fixed with server meshing, but will give developers the overhead to fix the problems that they have, I think.
Okay. I think that's a good way
Real
of putting
quick,
it. Overhead. Go ahead, Tree.
See who said it. I'll gotta scroll back up in chat. Someone mentioned something about resource management, and Tomato was actually just listening to your podcast earlier today with Morphologist when you were talking about engineering, which was a really good talk. But this is not only does this allow for the game to scale, add more star systems, add more density within the star systems in terms of point of interest, more NPCs, better performing NPCs, but this allows for the gameplay of those systems that they're developing to function because it will record there's so much more information that will be recorded via the replication layer and onto the entity graph than what we have right now. And so they need a really robust system that can handle it, because right now, if you log off and your ship gets stored and it records that state to the entity graph, it's a much more simple version than when you end up having 4 of those 4 SCU boxes filled with armor and weapons and usables in the cargo hold, and you have all the components, and each component has an entity state, as well as it's going to record the if you remember from Maelstrom demonstration, it's going to record the state of the pieces of your ship, the wear and tear, how much damage. So it's an insane
ridiculous
system. It's absolutely bonkers. They have reached for beyond the sky when it comes to the system, and it's really it's really a necessary system for these things that they've been showing off to work. And but it's the way that they're building it is pretty. I can't tell you how many people who are network engineers in different fields have told me that it's pretty genius the way that they're doing it, because you would normally worry about the communication between these things, but by co-locating them, so that way you don't have and by recording it both not only recording the entity state onto the replication layer, but having it also back that up onto the entity graph for long-term persistence. It's a very smart way of going about doing things, because it's, you talked about the redundancy. We've been dealing with 30Ks and not having real legitimate 30K protection for ages.
Yeah.
And this is going to be it.
It is
once it works.
It is really it is interesting digging down specifically, and I think into server meshing and the things that surround it. And I guess some of the other things in the engine in general, like Maelstrom, the Gen 12 renderer, there are some really big, complex things here that when you look at the development hours that it might take to build this stuff, and then you look at criticisms that people have for how much money this takes, they run up against each other, because this, like, it starts to make sense when you look at how much they had to pay people. I mean, maybe not those first 5 years, I can't account for what was happening there. That was a hefty time, but like definitely since around 2018 or so, 3.0 time, when they very clearly set out goals for server meshing and persistence, object container streaming, all those things, the way that they've been building and investing into that stuff, it's not surprising how much money they've taken.
The money and time. I mean, it's just as anyone who's ever, any expert I've heard talk about this, it basically, they said the CIG is insane. Like no single expert. I've never heard an expert who thinks that CIG is within their right mind of what they're doing, either negatively or positively. Even the people who are like, this is insane, they're saying this is insane because like no one's tried this at this scale with this sort of project. It just doesn't. You just don't hear that sort of thing. And it's one of those. Go ahead.
Research and development to solve a problem, and they're trying to tackle all the problems, not just one or two, related to a specific game or something like that. No, they're trying to do all the things at once with all these different teams. And that's why it costs so much money, because research and development costs a ton of money and a ton of time. It doesn't matter what you're researching and developing. It's gonna require a lot of investment. And that's, in any industry, that's why companies are reticent to develop new products and new technologies, because they have to have a proven market for it. And CIG is like, we're just going to do it and, advertise it and market it and hope it comes, it's just nuts.
But Tree, why didn't they just switch to Unreal Engine 5?
Yeah, they could do that in a month for sure. It's no big deal. Yeah.
I might also add they're very passionate about their project.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone visited the buggy tracks at the convention centers? They had one employee do that in, like, what did they say, a week or a month?
It's like a month.
I can't remember. It was on an ISC. That's impressive when he barely gets any time off work.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reality is that CIG hires people who are very passionate about what they want to do. They do this for a living, but they also do it for fun. Like they wouldn't do this sort of thing if they weren't passionate about it. And you can see that. Like I love Elliot's passion because Elliot's the kind of guy that you want to stick in a room with a bunch of other people like Elliot and be like, what if we put a flamingo on a rocket and had people try to find it in a giant haystack while they're being attacked by a dragon? And it's insane, but then you kind of work your way through and you go, oh yeah, I like this idea. Let's find some of these interesting concepts. Because like
one thing that was, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say at CitizenCon, everybody wanted to talk to the ship devs because everybody's all about the ships. And that was the funny thing to me, is because we had the pre-party at, what was that bar restaurant that we went to on Friday night? Everybody was there. Anyway, everybody was talking to the ship devs or Elliot and a few other, like the people, the gameplay related people. And Chad McKinney is standing there by himself. No one knew who Chad was. And I went up and I was like, Dr. Chad McKinney. And he's like, yeah, you know who I am? I was like, yes. And so I started talking to him and I totally fangirled and asked him a few questions about different things. And especially I referenced quotes from the monthly reports. Well, the devs write the paragraphs in the monthly reports, or they write things and then the community teams will paraphrase or add and subtract things in order to get the message across. And he's like, "You read that? I wrote that." I was like, I read all of the reports. And I literally may have said 3 sentences in about 45 minutes. And it was just hey, I was curious about this because I didn't understand that. And he just went off. And Benoit did the same thing when I talked to Benoit. And the UI team, when I went and talked to them, it was the same thing. Hey, I read about this. I didn't know what that meant. Can you explain to me? And they just, because they're so passionate and they love their work. And it was, I was just...
Dude,
wow.
Props off to you. Props to you, because I wish I had your memory, man. I walk up to these devs and I'm like, I like your game. Like, I don't remember what to ask them.
That's exactly what it was. And well, I literally, before we went down there, like I was talking with Naz back and forth, like, hey, what question? And so we wrote things down, and I'm an idiot and didn't like have a written piece of paper, but I should have been like an actual reporter, be like, because like they told me things and now I can paraphrase what they said based off of memory, but I didn't record. It's not like I recorded it or anything, but I had things that I was specifically curious about, and now I can remember what their answers were. And it was just amazing to talk to them because they were so passionate about their work and they really wanted to, talk about it. They really want, because they love what they're doing and they find it really interesting. And it was just, I felt kind of bad because, I was, one of the few people, that was gravitating to these devs, and meanwhile everybody's going up to the gameplay or the shift devs, because those are the ones you see and you remember, and everyone pays attention to them when they're on SCL. But if the UI team comes up, everybody's like, hey, it's Bone, and that's it. But
yeah. I mean, the point I've always liked to make is that, like, these are people who you want to be passionate and want to be working on you because they know what they're doing and they have ideas. And in many cases, they've been working in the industry for a long time, and this may be the first time that they've had a chance to be a senior dev or to actually have a say or have had a job that wasn't just stick you in a cubicle, do X, Y, or Z. I don't care. I don't want. We have this date. Get it done. I don't care. So it's interesting to see a lot of those folks kind of do some of those things. So.
Yeah, it's a theme within CIG of them poaching people, and they're happy to be poached because now they get to take the thing that they started working on somewhere else and go further with it, like how they originally wanted to.
Yeah, look at them. They freaking first they went after Crytek, right? Yeah. Took a bunch of whole of their people. Then they went and got their Fire Sprite, took some of their people. Cool, we got them. Nice. Then they went after Ubisoft, took some of their people. Then they're like, you know what? Let's just buy Turbulent. Took that. Like, who are those? They just keep on. And now we've got, what, 2,000 plus 3,000, something like 7,000 people laid off the video games industry in the last year. How many people do you think they're picking up from these companies?
Yeah. It sucks. It absolutely sucks.
It's a windfall for CIG, but God, that's got to be just so.
This is like a side tangent, but like it's
sorry.
Sad.
I did this in my stream this morning too. I keep
can they buy back at least for the if they're gonna buy studios, can they at least buy Origin back
from EA so they don't just keep? Well, Chris would do it if he had a chance to, but I mean
he would.
The issue is like. It's so sad when I saw a comment on like, every so often Star Citizen gets enough attention outside of the Star Citizen circles and like Reddit or other places where it becomes like the front page of Reddit or like a big talking point. And
a Tirada clip.
Yeah. Or Zero doing the race, kind of thing. And recently Star Citizen got a big press release. This is before the whole like change in the Legatus package, and the comments were mostly positive, but one of the even the most negative comments were Star Citizen at this point is just a jobs program. And I sat there and thinking, I don't know of any company that is really hiring other than CIG. And it's like, that's sad. CIG is made up of people who are making a game like they're passionate about it, and it's a kind of unique situation, but at that time they had 100+ people they were still trying to hire. And, like, what was it? Like Microsoft just laid off like more people than CIG has And so many other companies have been doing it. It's just like what the heck is going on? Why is CIG still hiring and everybody else is like kind of losing their mind? I don't know what's going on.
My entire hometown getting laid off at once.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Small town.
The silver lining is this is how we get more games like Hyperspace. Mm-hmm. This is how more indie devs get started to do passion projects. And you know, I wish all those people all the success in the world and hope that they're able to do great things with their newfound freedom.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, and I think it's also showing the kind of the shift in the industry, and it's one of the things that Star Citizen is showing is that yes, Star Citizen's unique. You would never see another CIG, but you are seeing more developers like, you know, Power World, made by a bunch of people who'd never made a video game before. They just got stuff and threw it together. You know, Hello Games, a small company. Recently, we've had like a lot of people have started to kind of really come around with the Outer Wilds, which was made by a small company.
Oh, really?
Of passionate developers. Yeah, not Outer Worlds, which came out around the same time. The Outer Wilds.
No, yeah, I didn't realize Outer Wilds was coming back into the limelight. That's cool.
Yeah,
we also have a bunch of people who are doing remasters. I'm trying to remember who it is that's doing the Dark Forces, the Star Wars Dark Forces remaster. Night Dive Studios. That's it. Night Dive.
Yeah. So, but I mean, these are the companies that are making games that people are gravitating to. They're the games that people want to go to, and they're not made by these large studios. And part of it is sad because, you know, large studios give a lot more like stability, but it's just, I don't know. Oh, we're going on a tangent about this. Let's kind of redirect back to the main question because I do have two more questions. So this next one, and I'm going to start with you, Tomato, on this one, is how likely are we going to see both the replication layer and server meshing this? How likely are we going to see both of them this year, in your opinion? Should people start getting excited for all these changes?
I don't like this question, man.
I'm making you to it.
It sounds
you put me on the spot for your podcast. Now I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, with your Theaters of War, that was your spot. You made that.
That was my spot. Yeah.
This is basically like a veiled when question.
It is a veiled when question. It's more of a in your opinion, do you think we will see them this year? Based off of the knowledge you have.
For legal reasons, you guys can't clip this. I think that it is. I think that there is a good chance we'll see both this year. Yeah. Now, what that does for us, I don't know.
Yeah.
Server, we could get static server meshing, and it could be an absolute train wreck, and take 6 months for them to get past their first step. So
318, Redux edition.
Yeah, yeah. I hope not. I mean, I don't think it'll be like 318. Maybe 318 light at the worst. I think they've learned from that, and I think they have like the cloud test launcher and stuff, more things to help them prepare for that. But I do think that there's a good chance that we'll see both these things happen this year in some capacity.
Okay. Tree. Same question.
Good luck.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
I do, and I'm gonna try and briefly say why. Now, is it like Jared said 4.0 this summer? Summer's a long time. Summer's multiple months.
Yeah.
4.0 is not coming on the heels of Invictus.
Invictus 4.0.
Now I don't expect 318 style delays, and simply because and they said this very explicitly, and if you want, I have the links, I can share them with you. But Benoit said, if you remember in the postmortem, both in the postmortem and then several, Naz and I did a podcast looking at all this stuff, but they talked about it in the postmortem. They talked about it in several posts regarding the preview channel and the replication layer tests and separation and all that. And the big difference between what they're doing right now with server meshing and the replication layer and crash recovery, and what they did with PES is PES was oh gosh, what was the verbiage that they used? It was
a train wreck?
all the things that it was. Yeah, definitely a train wreck. Yeah, for sure. But it was a train that was carrying multiple new services, and that was the problem. Is they said in the it was a big post that they did about server meshing in. Oh, my kid's going nuts in the background. Hopefully, you guys can't hear it. My wife hasn't. It's okay. He's not alone. But they did a big old post where they talked about server meshing. It was like a server meshing PES Q&A in 2020. Gosh, when was that? 2022. And the challenge with PES is that with the basic level of PES that we got in 3.18, it was still 8 new services. And so you had all those different points of failure, and it's not just 8, it's 8 times 8, because all the little connected points. Whereas with the server meshing, with replication layer and server meshing, they can introduce these things in a stepwise fashion. And so instead of introducing it all at once, and they don't know where the point of failure is, and it's a lot more work for them to find the point of failure, hence 3.18 train wreck, instead they can introduce things piecemeal, and there's less things to introduce. So right now we're getting the replication layer. It's not the replication layer plus 8 new services. It's just separation of taking what we have now and moving it over here. And then, now they're adding crash recovery to it, but it's a much less, gosh, I can't remember the verbiage that they used, but it's a
it's like a more
bombshell or something. Yeah, it's a much more controlled process. And then Space Meadow, you talked about that with the cloud test launcher and the headless clients using a Linux system to be able to stress test them without us doing it for them beforehand, just to make sure it's able to handle the number of connections. Because that was a big problem with PES, is that they wanted to be able to use that to test PES, because they started the development of that cloud test launcher. They showed it, they talked about it in ISC, like, what was it, summer of 2021, 2022, before. Yeah, summer of 2022.
They started it a little while before.
It wasn't done. Yeah, and it wasn't done. And so they are working hard on this to be able to get it ready to use it to test server meshing on the separation of the replication layer. Because if they just have to rely on concurrency of players to stress things, we saw how that went with PES and 3.18 in PTU. And that was the problem. So I do think it's going to happen, because and this is, again, disclaimer, this is from my conversation with Benoit. So there's no public post that I can share with this, share to you. But when I asked him, because in that PES server meshing Q&A, they had said for dynamic server meshing, they had 12 new services planned, and 8 of them were rolled out with PES. And so I asked him, I was like, what do we need? What are these other services? And so, and are they a requirement for dynamic server meshing or for static? And he's like, that's the great thing. We don't have additional services needed for static server meshing to be deployed after separation of the replication layer and crash recovery. Those additional services, the Atlas system and the shard manager, I forget what they are, but those are in order to scale it up to dynamic V1 and then V2. So we really don't have, once we get separation of the replication layer and crash recovery, static server meshing is next. And so we don't have this big old long chain of events of adding in these other services. So I think we're going to see it. I don't expect delays like we had for PES, but I do expect delays. I don't expect 6 to 9 months like we had with PES or whatever it ended up being. I expect a quarter.
Okay.
So.
A quarter from what?
A quarter from summer, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm thinking late summer, early fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will also add in the one thing that it was very clear from my limited interaction with Benoit, and I've met with Benoit a couple times. I actually met with Benoit, who actually introduced himself to me because he knew who I was at GDC, and that was creepy. All right, it was creepy. It was the first time a dev knew who I was and talked to him. I'm like, I don't what? Okay.
I like your game.
Yeah.
And The thing is that Benoit is very clear. He views static meshing as a waste of everyone's time. He views it as a waste of time, a waste of resources. If he could jump into dynamic meshing right away, he would. He doesn't want to go to stick around in static meshing. He wants to go as fast as possible and go into that dynamic meshing.
But we want to play Benoit.
That's the thing.
they have to, because static server meshing is going to cost them a lot of money.
Yeah, they do.
This
need
is part
to,
of the reason they took on that private investment.
Yeah, it costs them a lot of money to do static meshing, because if they're just doing static meshing, they are going to waste money on resources on a server that may not have anybody in it. It's an empty server. It could be an empty server for a lot of people. Like they could have a situation where once they have dynamic mesh or static meshing in, half of the servers they've purchased are empty, which is just a waste of money and time. So having the dynamic meshing is more of a money-saving thing, if anything else. It's cool for a lot of different reasons for gameplay, but it means that if nobody's in Stanton, if everyone's having a party in Pyro on Shard, Epsilon 529, then Stanton, no server has to be spun up for Stanton. It can just be dead. No one, it's just there in the memory somewhere, until someone shows up. And
just little old Stanton.
Yeah. So, like, that's the advantage. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, end of the year next year, Benoit's team are like we're getting dynamic rolling out now. Quick. We're like here's static. Boom. Yeah. So I will say I'll go with Access before I go with my opinion. Do you think we're going to see Access? Do you think we're going to see both static server meshing and both replication layer split and dynamic or static server meshing this year?
I'm very hopeful at this point. Before this CitizenCon, I was kind of down. And then all the stuff, the buildup, everything, and post and before, I'm just very hopeful that we get both, things going. Because it'll fundamentally change the game. I mean, one of your commenters is apparently testing it right now on the replication layer, and they brought up that it's really good.
Yeah, Architect is not a commenter. Okay, he's royalty. Architect is fantastic now. I know you said commenter, but it sounded like you said commenter. So it was just like Architect is royalty here. So.
I mean, who's that peasant testing the replication layer?
Who are you, peasant?
In your chat,
Architect, you peasant.
I am not. I am royalty. I can say something. No, I'm not.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I was showing off. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this as well was because someone posted a picture or video of the crash recovery system working, and it worked in 5 minutes, which I know is a long time, but it was a lot of it was just staring at a screen.
Mountain of debugging running.
Yeah. So
yes, you heard your name, Architect.
Yeah. He was pointing out the fact that you were saying like you're testing it right now and that kind of stuff. So, and saying 30 FPS. Yeah, it's good. So you're more hopeful this year that we're going to get these things.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful that I'm leaning toward very likely, but still cautious. Because things happen.
Mm. I'm going to be bold, and because this is 2024, the year of the bold pub. I've said Theaters of War this year, and I'm going to say we're not only are we going to get the separation layer split, but we're also going to get static server meshing, and I think we're going to get dynamic 1 before the end of the year.
What?
Paul. I don't think we're going to get dynamic 1 to live before the end of the year.
Clip it.
Do it. Clip it. Show it to me tomorrow. Show it to me. I will eat humble pie and
literally screenshot it and then put it on the wall so we never forget.
I think it'll probably end up in a tech preview. I think they'll end the year with a tech preview of Dynamic 1 as it's just saying, hey, we want to make sure we're good because like the teams behind server meshing seem to be very, very adamant that like they hate static. They hate the idea of static. They wish they didn't have to do static, but they need it as a jumping point off. They need to test it. There's a lot of different things that could go wrong, so they need to use it as a staging point towards dynamic. but they also think that they can roll into dynamic really quickly because they think that the systems are not that difficult. And honestly, I don't think that fundamentally the difference between dynamic and static server meshing, there's really not that much difference except for the services of the logic of when do you spin up a server and when you don't. That's the
and where the transitions are.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Benoit said is because I asked him about that. And so I dropped the link in chat a little while ago about the unofficial roadmap to dynamic server meshing. And we know like the shard manager and the Atlas system. And I think there's one other thing, and I always get which one's which confused. But the necessity of static server meshing is so they can start finding out where those transition limits where hey, the cup has gotten too full, we need to pour half into a second cup. And they need to figure that out for not only the servers but for the replication layer, because for us to have much higher increased player counts, we need to be able to have a shard have multiple the shard isn't just a lot of servers and one replication layer. A shard will eventually be numerous replication layers servicing numerous servers for different areas. And so he's like, that's where they've already started the development on the Atlas service, the shard manager, that you can see that's on the progress tracker. They did some work on it, but they could only go so far because they didn't have the data to continue the work on it. That's why they need static server meshing. But once they have that data, they're confident that they can quickly progress and wrap up that tier 1 version of now we need to get out static or dynamic version server meshing V1. Mm-hmm. The good thing about dynamic V1 is it's going to use the same static sort of geographic areas for breaking up servers, your entity zones, your object container zones. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason he thinks that they can get there quickly, because you won't have you're just divide, saying, okay, now we're going to subdivide Microtech into Microtech and New Babbage, and it's going to be a server for New Babbage, a server for the rest of Microtech, and a server for Porch Wrestler. Mm-hmm. And that's hard entity zone barriers. The big challenge, and he's like, where the big hurdle will be from getting from V1 to V2 will be, how do we not have a hard barrier and we can just spin it up, we can draw the lines wherever we want them to.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge.
Yeah, I was going to say that a lot of people, someone in the chat was saying that it's going to be a pain in the ass to know that the borders are. But with V1, they already have those borders. They're the object container object containers.
Yeah, the object containers, entity zone containers are already there. It's already a system that's in the game. They've object containers streaming both server side and client side is a thing. It's something that the game already uses. It's just a matter of dividing up entity responsibility within those object containers to new servers.
Yeah.
And making that work. So that logic is already there.
One of the situations that sounded like it scared the guys in the podcast early this week the most was the idea of having multiple servers visible to each other. Mm-hmm. So essentially being able to have a server that's 2 servers away from you that you can see things going on in, and then figuring out how the interaction would work between, if you shot a bullet or if somebody flew a ship really quickly through there, how that kind of stuff would be tracked. And when you start getting into those crazy edge cases, that's when it's kind of like, okay, they're going to have to do a lot of figuring out as they go through this.
There'll be a limit. Like CIG will find the limit, and they'll put put it there. And what CIG will likely do is just make that limit the hard limit of player cap, those sorts of things. Because they already kind of have some of those answers. Like they have LODs. They've always had LODs. So being able to see something that's 2 servers away, it's probably not going to be 2 meters from in your face. It's probably going to be hundreds of kilometers away, and it's just going to be a speck on the horizon. But you can still track that it's there in that distance. The problem is if you're in a fleet battle with hundreds of capital ships firing at each other, each firing plasma, firing ballistic weapons, torpedoes, missiles, all of those have to be tracked on going between each of the servers at each other in a flawless handoff. So
All your hands right now are cracking me up.
I'm doing Chris Roberts hands, all right? Chris hands.
Chris hands,
but I mean, like, that's nuts. Like, it's going to be impossible to track, accurately. We're going to see lots of weird behaviors where torpedoes are fired and then disappear. Just blink out of existence.
That's that upper limit to the replication layer.
Yeah.
And at what point do they say, okay, this replication layer can't handle anymore. We need to subdivide it. And how do they draw that out? Because can you have a replication layer controlling these 5 and like all these, these 5 servers and these 5 servers with either each of their own replication layer are all essentially some weird polytetrahedron thing, in terms of sharing borders and assets. And that's where it gets really complicated and the logic gets complicated.
Yeah.
And that's where dynamic V2 is they don't know where that is.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to, dynamic V1 is, just incredible in its own. But that I don't see, like, you're talking about dynamic V1, in tech preview end of year. I think that's probably pretty reasonable. In terms of dynamic V2, to me, that's still, that's not all the way up there with the single shard thing, but it's pretty close. It's that last step to the holy grail of single shard that I don't think they'll ever reach.
Yeah, no, I think they'll get pretty close, and I'm frozen right now, so I'm trying to refresh my camera. But
the single shard.
I thought you
thing.
Just had perfect composure.
Perfect composure. I'm actually also a ventriloquist, so I can speak without my mouth open. All right, so last question before we go into the question and answers, and I'm going to start with Axis on this one, which is what will it change in terms of the player experience? What will these new technologies change in terms of the day-to-day player experiences? Will we see any kind of changes that players will actually notice? Because it's one thing to say that all this technology is going to allow for all these different things to happen, but we already have NPCs in the game. We already have combat. We have all these things already. Will players even care that like these things exist? Like, what is going to how will this change any of that sort of fundamental day-to-day player gameplay?
Okay, I can go over it a little bit.
Okay.
One thing that you can expect is higher. Well, the simplest, bare bones thing is higher player caps. I think right now we cap out at about 100 tree and tomato. What do you think? About 100?
Yeah, it's like 100, 110.
140. Yeah.
I think they
So
that will allow for more flexibility with upper limits for servers per system, but also for the universe population. They're not talking about that, yet. But as you expand, even offline, there's going to be a background universe simulation, running in the background. But I'm getting a little too far ahead. The barest things that players are going to notice is more interactivity with the bartenders, the NPCs that give out missions, hopefully the bunker missions that a lot of you, the death of 30K, thank you, Dell. Thank you for that. And also the 30K deaths, and what else am I forgetting? Keeping your cargo whenever it does shut off. I actually have some experience with that where it takes just 2 30Ks in a row to lose things that are in storage right now. We don't have any buffer to protect against that right now, and I'm hoping this ends that. Sorry.
Okay, good. That's good. Those are all good points. Like, to add to your point, like a lot of people, when we say like the death of 30K, what we mean is that you'll no longer have 30K where you just crash out. And now, hopefully, when the replication layer and crash handler is done, when you will never have you'll have interruptions, but you'll never have like you have crashed desktops, but you could get, when you come back in, you'll always be where you were last time the replication layer copied where you were. So that actually leads to some other problems, because it could also lead to I'm stuck on the surface of Daymar and then someone needs to come pick me up. Right now I can just go, I'll log out and log back in and I'll be back on the station.
Right.
But when that is activated, it's what Chris keeps calling true persistence. You're just gonna be stuck there until you either die or get rescued. And
we got to fix caves first, because that's how I've gotten out of so many caves.
And that's the problem, is that like we're gonna definitely see some issues where like the game will still be buggy and still have problems, and you will see people who will like get in that situation where their ship explodes randomly and they're on the surface of Hurston and they are 400 kilometers away from rescue. What do they do? And alone. So, or falling through the planet and constantly,
Resource
Got your medical gown.
Definitely.
What's that, Tree?
Oh, you said alone. And I said naked and alone.
Naked and alone, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that idea, because it's also one of those things where...
Of course you do, pervert.
Yeah. What I mean is more like like you're working 400 kilometers, or having to walk like 400 kilometers to the nearest aid shelter. That's a story. That's my ship exploded and I got stuck on this on Hurston, and I was the closest aid shelter was 400 kilometers. So I had to hike 400 kilometers, which took me 5 hours to get there, and I had to scavenge up like water and food on the way, and by that time hopefully we have things like critters like fauna, and maybe having to like fight a wolf pack over from killing you while you're doing it.
And
that's
the whole time you're just trying to log off and go to dinner.
And so, yeah, sometimes you just want to go home and you just can't.
And you brought up a couple of things also, Paul, that it will enable players' interactions with wildlife. We have no wildlife in game now with complex behaviors or resource management when you get, because you'll run out of air and water in your suit.
Yeah. Tree, any day-to-day stuff that the people will see with these new technologies coming in?
The low-hanging fruit is the player cap. We talk about the server performance. We talk about the death of the 30K, not the literal death, but the restoration. I think the thing that is not really discussed too much, well, two things. So the first one is, if you remember from, it was the original Rastar presentation, or maybe it was the second one, where they talked about using Rastar to provide the greatest density of location points of interest in and around on and around a planet. We are nowhere near the density of locations that they want. That's why they've built the tools like the procedural location tool in Rastar, so they can put lots of points of interest on every planet, in every asteroid field, on every moon, because the goal of the game is for you not to be hopping around, crossing star systems on a regular basis, going from system to system on a regular basis. They want you to be staying within a planetary system, doing missions and jobs for a long period of time before you pick up and move. It's just, the goal is for it to be like, if you move from Crusader to, and this is a good example because it's a small system, but if you move from Terra and you're going to pick up and move your entire operation to Castra, they want that to be a big endeavor, and they want you to to take that seriously. And it's not going to, most people aren't going to be doing that a lot, because there's going to be so much to do just within a planetary system based off the amount of points of interest. In order for us to have that, we got to have this, the separation of the replication layer and server meshing to be able to break all that up. So that's what's going to allow for that. That's also what's going to keep people on a server and not be hopping servers all over the place, for the most part. There can be a lot fewer server transitions than what people think, because we're not going to be playing the game like we do today, where you just are constantly crossing Stanton. The second thing, and this, I'm going to hark back to the Space Tomatoes podcast that you did with Morphologists. Gosh, I think it was like a month ago. That's how far behind I am. But you guys were talking about resource management, and you're talking about NPC crew. And I think the thing that everybody is looking forward to and everybody wants is NPC crew. Well, we need this to allow for functioning NPCs, which is what's going to get us the NPC crew. What I think people aren't appreciating is, just like there will be a hard player cap on a shard, because the like you were talking about Space Tomato with the how many servers can we connect in a weird geometric shape, communicating to each other. there will not only be a hard player cap, there's going to be a hard NPC cap. There's not going to be unlimited number of NPCs. And so everybody needs to wrap their head around, yeah, I want to have NPC crew. Okay, well, you're going to be NPC crew are a commodity just like anything else, and there's a limited supply. But this is going to allow for NPCs to do the functionality that we need for them, for NPC crew to manage our bases, to function in missions and all that. And so it's going to make the universe A, feel more dense, but B, feel more alive.
Awesome.
Densely populated. Sorry.
Space Tomato. Same question.
Not dense isn't stupid.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement in a big way with what Tree said. Really, one of the most frustrating things in this game is like taking a certification for a bounty, finishing the bounty, and then going to take the next job, and they're like, yeah, just fly 40 million kilometers to this other planet and you can go ahead and continue your work. It's like, why would I ever want to do this? Isn't a game that should be making us do that. They purposefully make quantum travel take so much time so that we consider flying to another planet, but we don't have the content to actually make that happen yet. And I agree with you. Being able to build up a bunch of different points of interest, space stations, derelicts, crash ships, mission locations all around a planet, even within a couple million kilometers of that planet, would do a lot to make the game feel more alive. But I also
a lot more
think,
short hops.
Yeah, a lot more. You go from your planet, you do a mission, maybe a couple missions in an area, and then you return to your planet rather than returning to another planet or something. And I also think
makes it more approachable to the mainstream.
Yeah. And then there's also sort of, again, I guess going back to what I said earlier, it'll allow them to do more things. It'll allow them to move past a lot of these roadblocks they have. One of the things that I don't think is directly connected to server meshing, but will benefit because of the prerequisites that it's needed, is the quantum simulation. It doesn't seem like something that they can really do until they've scaled up enough to have all these different aspects, all these different economic nodes in a star system that are actually feeding into an economy. And right now they can only make 50, 70, I don't know, however many, a few dozen different locations. That's not enough to run an economy from what they've said. So it seems like something like server meshing will help with things like that. It'll help with them loading in entities when we're talking about things like Maelstrom, as we've said. It'll help with NPCs running better. It's just raising the ceiling on how well Star Citizen can perform. So in terms of everyday things, less than some sort of out of nowhere change from server meshing, I think it'll just be a general continuing of the quality of life increase.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to address that last one because it's one of the things you hear a lot about with a lot of folks. It was just like that a lot of people don't seem to get why this is important. They want Pyro because we all want Pyro because Pyro represents the next step in the game's evolution to multiple systems, and there's lots of things that Pyro represents. But without this technology, it's pointless because that's really what Pyro represents. Is it represents all of this culmination of all this technology, and really, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this before we move to the question and answers. The kind of finalization of Star Citizen in the sense of the base work, the stuff that CIG's been talking about forever, is finished because. We mentioned object container streaming. Another great thing is the 64-bit floating precision. These things are done. If you're an old backer like myself, you probably remember these discussions back in like 2014, 2015 of them having to do these things. All of these were designed with server meshing in mind. Everything was done for server meshing. So the technology they were developing and building 10 years ago is the stuff that was, they had to put that together because they were putting towards this vision of what Star Citizen would become. So
what you're saying is it's been a long road getting from there to here.
Yes.
It's been a long time, but our time is finally here.
Yes.
Have you held the line?
I have, because love isn't always on time, Tomato.
On time.
I made that joke on Twitter, and a lot of people thought I was being like super like protective of CIG, and I was like, no, I'm just quoting Toto. That's how dumb that line
Paul,
is.
it's not that deep.
Yeah. Thank you, Axis. Thank you, Space Tomato. Thank you, Tree, for joining us. We're going to be heading to the question and answer session, so let these folks use the restroom, get other things they need to do. You can go ahead and use the restroom, the things you do. As always, we're still doing the subathon, so if you're watching us live, any donations, subscriptions, or bits on Twitch, we'll move that number up. We're currently sitting at, we've been streaming for 11 hours and 25 minutes. And that means I have about 15 hours and almost 16 hours, I think, 14 hours. Yeah, almost 13. 14 hours and almost 15, I think, is how that works. My brain, it's like a 14:40, like 6 or something like that. 14 hours and 46 minutes. So almost 15 hours. We're almost at 15 hours. So,
Math.
All right, with that, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Thank you for watching. Be right back. We're back with a question and answer session with Axis 0096, Tree 0311, and Space Tomato.
What numbers?
Yeah, it's Space Tomato 42.
002.
002. There we go. This is Space Tomato 2. And Space Tomato 2. There we go. That works. There. Axis 0096, Tree 0311, and Space Tomato 2.
There we go.
So there's a lot of questions, and we've already been going for quite a long time. So I want to respect the guests' time as much as possible. So I'm going to probably pause redemptions here in a few moments, just because I want to make sure that we're and if there are some double questions, if you asked a question already earlier and you asked it again because we weren't answering it, I'll probably skip like half of that or whatever. So just note that if we skip your question or it's not personal, it's just more of a time constraint sort of thing.
No, it's probably personal.
It's personal. Tree hates you. That's the reason why we do it.
You specifically.
Yeah. you listener, viewer.
Robert.
You say that, but now someone who's listening to this at their desk at work who's named Robert just turned and looked at the screen like, what?
he's gonna comment on the YouTube video, be like, I'm unsubbing because of what Tree said. And then,
Cancel Tree.
Trust me, that's not the weirdest comments we've seen on our videos, guys.
All right, the first question comes from Fajisen TV, FJESINGEN TV. I'm not going to try to say that again. Anyways, who asks, how big was the nerf for bounty hunting? Farm ships all day, and I can't find one single egg nor maize. You can blame, if you're going to blame anyone, blame Voidy. Because Voidy made a big video about how it's easy to exploit the weevil eggs, and a lot of other people have made it. And all of those videos, one of the first things I see, and like on social media, I see the head of the mission teams going, "Oh, changing that in the next patch." So CIG does actually follow what people do, and they do actually make corrections accordingly if they think that people are making too much money off of something. So this is me speaking to you, salvage folks, who will not like what's going to happen in like 3.23 and 3.24, because I'm almost certainly it's going to get nerfed too. That profitability is going to take a nosedive into the dirt. So
yeah, bounty hunting became salvage gameplay over the last few months.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. Next question comes from Steve the Dancer, who asks, with the coming of engineering gameplay, how would you fix free ship claiming to fix component and economy issues it has? I'll start with you, Space Tomato.
Wait, ask that again?
So the question is, with the coming of engineering gameplay, how would you fix free ship claiming to fix components and economy issues it has? So Steve the Dancer is basically saying, how are we going to fix the problem where instead of just repairing your ship, you just destroy your ship and then claim it because it's cheaper?
Make the claim times go up.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was going to be my answer. Claim timers are going to go up, so
and be more expensive, and maybe like I don't know, they start adding prices to your insurance as you keep losing your ship.
Mm-hmm. Or increase the time. The timer goes up as you lose your ship more and more.
Yeah. If you claim it again, have it the scale. If you claim it once, okay, it's going to take X amount of time. If you claim it again within a certain amount of time, it goes up longer, and that's just the interim until you also have the insurance costs. If you don't have LTI, if you only got 6 months of insurance and then insurance runs out, or you buy a ship in game and then you have to buy insurance for it. Well, what happens if you make multiple claims on your car? Your insurance goes up. It's the same thing. Space Minnow, you talked about it with Morphologists. Morphologists talked about it with the repair of ships. It's no different than your own car. And you can choose to either, if you claimed your car every time you got a flat tire, your insurance is going to go through the roof. But if you, if you make a stop, if you, every, so often you stop at a station and you pull into the the repair part, and you do press X to do the maintenance, and somebody does the equivalent of changing the oil and replacing your rotor, your rotors and your brake pads, and the air filter on your car. That's the equivalent of just doing the maintenance on your ship, and you just keep on going. It's or you just do it on your own, like the weirdos who have the shop in their garage.
Yeah,
it's no different. Exact same thing.
Axis, same question. How would you fix it?
I'm kind of torn on it because we've also had item increases. So why would it have a blanket increase if somebody has, say, more expensive components in for a certain ship, right? Like a 100i has B grade components or C grade components like coolers and such. Will that translate to higher insurance or reclaim costs? That's what I'm curious about. That's coming possibly.
Okay, so you're saying like not just a blanket reclaim timer, but like a itemized timer where like your costs. So like depending on what you have on your ship is going to increase the timer rather than just start off with it. I think it's interesting. I could see that too because it's something CIG wants to do. They want to start itemizing and like looking at the base cost of materials and commodities and then pricing everything accordingly. So
I've kind of wanted to say it for a while because people pay different prices for the different component grades. So I could definitely see a multi-tiered step-up ladder depending on how much it is, and it may add a different time because different components in lore probably take different amounts of time to manufacture depending on what they are.
And probably have different quality of content inside of them. Like some of them are probably more, some of them are cheaper made, a la Drake,
Sorry, I wasn't trying to get super tangent.
No, it's a good point. It's a good way of putting it. And for those of you who've played Elite, because I'm sure someone in Elite, some Elite fans will bring it up. That's how Elite works. Your insurance is based off of how much your components cost. So if you have you have a couple options if your ship blows up. You can either go back to the basics, or you can pay for all of the upgrades and all of the costs of them. So, so you never have a chance, and I think you can always go back to your Sidewinder. So you always have the chance of going back to your starter ship if you completely screwed up and you're out of money. But everything else is going to cost you some money. So
that would be a good system to keep also for Star Citizen as well.
Oh yeah. All right, Captain Serious Fun asks, when we hit beta, I'm gonna stop you right there. When we hit beta, what ships will not be able to QT across Pyro? If my Mustang hits E in the middle of a system and I get out and leave it there, how long should it persist in that location? That's two questions, really, but like, what ships will likely be able to QT across Pyro? I think almost all ships will be able to QT across Pyro, but you're not going to like the timer. Like an Aurora should be able to with the most efficient drive, but it might take you 4 times the time, the length, the like time you're used to. It might take you 30 minutes to get across Pyro. But the other question is, why are you QTing across Pyro? Who just who goes to like Pyro 1 and be like, I'm going to QT all the way to the last planet for fun? Like that's not a normal gameplay loop. I don't think you don't even do that now. Like I'm just going to go from Microtech to, or like one of the what's the for like the Magnus jump point all the way to like the furthest away that point is for fun. Like that never happens in gameplay now. Why would it happen suddenly in Pyro? Go ahead, Space Mariner.
I was just going to say, I think that it's reasonable for certain ships to not be able to make the jump across there, especially like light fighters. But like short range ships, yeah, I wouldn't expect to make that flight because honestly, like you said, why would they be preparing ships for that kind of travel? It's like driving across country on one gas tank.
Yeah, that's not possible.
Yeah, and CIG is not building the game around that. They don't. If you are in a light fighter, there's no reason for you to be doing that. If you're in Aurora, there's no reason for you to be doing that. that's not the way that they're building the game. It's what we were talking about earlier, that they want density of stuff, so you're sticking around in one area because they don't want you server hopping.
Yeah.
Like that's a thing. I just dropped a link in chat. It's 4 years old, but it is from it's from 2019, March of 2019. It is from the literal horse's mouth himself, about quantum drives and the influence of quantum drives and quantum travel and all that. And so there's going to be a lot of variation in terms of quantum travel and how fast you can go a distance, how far you can actually go, how heat plays into it. And, you can go this far on a tank, but you have to make 3 stops because your quantum drive will reach, a certain amount of heat. And then you have to stop, let the heat dissipate, and then start up again. There's a lot that goes into that. And so check out that link. It's from Chris Roberts himself, and it can let you, hey, buddy, what are you doing? It can let you better understand where they're going with it. The other thing is, everybody is long been paranoid about Pyro because, it is bigger than Stanton. Pyro is a small system, folks.
Yeah.
Stanton, if you think of systems, I think of systems in the same way we think about hangars, where you have, hi, buddy. Yeah, don't touch that. You have extra small, medium, large, capital. I think of systems in the same way, and I've broken them up in a spreadsheet that way. And I think of like under 10 as extra small.
Mm-hmm.
And like, 10 and above is where you start, 10 to like 30, 10 to 20 or 10 to 30, I forget where I broke it up, is small. And then you have medium and large and so on. Go look at the star map, folks. You're not going to be transitioning systems, entire systems, very often. And when you do, it's really going to be the small systems that are, like Stanton and such. So wrap your heads around that, because the people that are going to be doing that are going to be the long haulers in the capital ship, the capital haulers. So your whole C, D, and E. Those are the people who are going to be doing that. No one else needs to worry about it, because it's not going to be a thing you're going to be doing on a regular basis. But now the Pyro's down to like 9.8 AU based from that video. So it's really not that big.
No.
They made it bigger, smaller.
But yeah. What was that? It was the engine video, right?
The engine video. Yeah, they said it was 9.8 now, or 9.5 EU now.
Yeah.
So
because it started out as 13? I think it was 17 originally, and then it got bumped down to 13.
Yeah.
And now it's 9. Nix used to be 39, and now it's at 11.
Yeah.
But there are systems that have gotten bigger. It's been a lot of movement around, but
yeah. And there will always, I was going to say, there are systems like Keel, which are 100 plus AU, that might go down, but it also has a ton of planets. Alice has a lot of planets. Yeah. So
the number of systems that have gotten bigger over time is the same as the number of systems that has gotten smaller over time. They're just moving the slider around in different areas within the universe in order to make it mix up a little bit. Null is 120 AU. Everybody worries about Pyro and like, oh, it's huge, and it's like, no, Pyro is the starter system for pirates.
Yeah,
it's less than 10 AU. There's stations there. There's multiple factions for you to work with. Null is 120 AU. And there's a whole lot of and it's not really close to anything. So it's going to be a much different experience than these other bigger systems.
Yeah. Axis. I was going to address the other question, part of that question, which was, if they hit E and they just abandon their Mustang in the middle of space, how long it will persist there? As long as the server decides that it's valuable to be there. What CIG has said is that any player-owned and player-manipulated stuff they're going to try to keep there the longest, but eventually it'll be cleaned up. You couldn't just like abandon your Mustang in the middle of Pyro because it ran out of gas, and then come back 4 years later and it's still there. Like and at some point it will get cleaned up. But I would imagine
no one's there. The server doesn't care about it. The server won't simulate it there if no one's in the area. That's what the replication layer and the entity graph are for, in order to be able to more effectively offload the server, which we don't have now.
Go ahead.
one way they might clean it up for longer durations of being away from it is possibly physical things that can happen to a ship when you're away from it. Like maybe it collides with a random space rock if it's in an asteroid field or something like that. And, you have to reclaim it anyways. I mean, eventually this stuff is going to allow planetary bodies to move. Who says that even though you're in the same orbit, it's going to move at the same velocity as your ship?
That's another question entirely. I know a lot of people were asking, and that's one of the questions that I'll ask real quickly. Well, one of the questions from Iris was, can we explain dynamic server meshing is and why do we need it? We've already kind of described that one, so hopefully I hope that helps you. But you brought it up, and I remember there was a question about that, which is, and it might be in this one. Benjamin Flick asked, will this free up planets to orbit? Will server meshing and dynamic and the server meshing and replication layer separation, will that free up resources, or will it give us enough to orbit? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't think even CIG knows, because they've even talked about how complicated the whole process is. And I don't think that's really tied to server meshing or to dynamic, or to, I keep saying that, dynamic or static meshing, but or replication layer. It's more tied to travel. And like the new system of how quantum systems the new quantum travel systems that they're implementing, which are physicalized compared to what were they before? Like they said they literally just skipped along the spline rather than actually travel. Now they're actually flying around the spline. That is going to allow them to do things like.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Oh, is that why the little marker would always update in jumps across the star map instead of...
Because you're literally just skipping across the spline rather than actually traveling that way. You are actually moving, but you're not moving every point along that line. So, and they've talked about this before, like where orbiting is going to cause problems because if you're going from point A to point B and there's time acceleration, which they have, you're going to... The planets are going to move faster than you think, and you have to get within their planetary like object container to be able to not get lost with them, and you have to meet them at the right point and enter that object container as it's moving. So it would be like two ships moving at incredible speeds, rendezvousing at the same time while also transferring all that data. So like it's like the server meshing doesn't really have anything to play into that, as more as like travel. And maybe a little bit of the data back and forth, but a lot of it is just the travel and how they can calculate transitions and such. So
something they really don't want to touch until they're absolutely ready.
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
I would think so, Trey. Yeah.
I think that's one of those things that's that like, yes, it's such a it's such a complicated issue that I don't even think we're going to see that until well after release, almost, because it's one of those, they want to make sure it works properly, and it would cause a lot of problems. That is literally what the tech preview channel is built for, is some stuff like that. So, all right. Next question comes from Iris Dreadtide, who asks, what is your favorite weapons company and why? This may not be this may or may not be a thinly veiled excuse for Paul to break out the Castec Arms corporate anthem. I'm not going to do that to these people. I'll put a link to the corporate anthem, to the Twitch clip that is the corporate anthem of Castec, that I put on Twitter earlier. It's funny. I made a joke. But of course, I do like Castec Arms, mostly because of their lore, but also because their weapons are bonkers, because it also fits with the lore. For those who don't know, Castec Arms were built to be cheap, easy to use, easy to learn, easy to manufacture and repair weapons that could take down a Tavarn, Vanduul. So effectively, the cheapest elephant gun you can build. And they got creative with it. And so that's why the guns look all weird and wonky. And that also is the reason why they all shoot like bullets and projectiles that are hit like the left hand of God, because they have to take down a charging Vanduul, which is armored naturally.
Bolters.
Yeah, bolters. Yeah, if there's company in Star Citizen that would build a bolter, it would be Castac Arms. Yeah, their lore and their aesthetic and their actual like gameplay is all tied so well together that I'm just like, wow, it's perfect.
Space I like the Karna.
Karna, yeah,
yeah, but I really like the Gemini aesthetic. I think when it comes to guns, yeah, Mass Effect feel to it, kind of.
Oh yeah, Tree.
It's hard to pick because I'm with you. I picked my favorite manufacturers based off of their lore.
Mm-hmm.
And like Castac has great lore, and I think the best equivalent to Castac when it comes to lore is Virgil, but it's not guns.
Yeah,
because Virgil, they lost their dang star system to the Vandul, and they retreated to Vega, and now they make big stompy mechs and stuff, and I love Virgil, and it's the other company that I like, and again, it's not weapons, but it's armor. It's the guy that made the company that made that like leather armor, and the guy, I'm brain farting. He couldn't get into the UE Navy because he had a heart condition.
It's like it's an A something. Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But
yeah.
I like it just because the story behind how the company was formed and what their influence is interesting to me. The Gemini lore is really cool too. It's a cool aesthetic, but the story behind them is really interesting. And I think the stories behind the armor and gun manufacturers are some of the best for the corporate lore in Star Citizen.
Yeah. There's a lot of diversity too, because like even like Garrity Defense, like I can't remember the name. It's a name. It's like Basilisk Arms has a crazy backstory, because it's like a woman wanted to make make ship hulls that had solar panels built into them so that they could charge the batteries while they flew, and like they became obsessed with it, and eventually just ass backwards her way into getting a military contract for building ship armor, and that's turned into all these sorts of things. There's lots of cool stuff like that. So Axis, your favorite weapons manufacturer?
Definitely Gemini, because well, there's many reasons why. I love the AO3 as a sniper rifle. Mm-hmm. Can't wait to try out a couple of other things. The one thing that they're lacking though is heavier weapons, like a grenade launcher and such, which is from
Bearing.
Who makes the Bearing? Yeah, the Bearing grenade launcher. I'd love to see a Gemini version of that, or a Castac version.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Castac version would be a metal pipe with an air compressor in the back, and it would
sell me it.
And
a potato launcher.
Yeah, but it wouldn't actually fire grenades. It would fire miniature nukes. It's like the only thing to stop a charging group of stop a charging group of Vandul is the heart of a sun.
I imagine something kind of like the grenade launcher from, I think it was like Halo Reach or something like that. It's basically just like a tube with a handle on the end.
Yeah, just boop. Yeah,
the M79 of the future.
Yeah.
Oh, and Grey Cat handheld tools.
Yes. Yep. Just a tragic story. I love the lore, but also I love all of their stuff fits so well together. CIG does a really good job of taking the lore and the gameplay of the various things and kind of meshing them together. It's like, yeah, they look like they belong to each other, but the story matches with the looks, and the looks and the story match the purpose of each of the parts, and they do a really good job of that world building that you just kind of can tell. Like as Space Marine, you talked about with the Gemini, like you can just glance at a Gemini weapon and know it's a Gemini weapon. You don't even know that it's a Gemini weapon. You just see the silhouette and know what it is, how it's going to work. It's going to fire lots and lots of bullets because it's what Gemini does, and so you can you get the feel for them. So, all right. Next question comes from Ashhole, who asks, once server meshing is in, how are streamers going to combat stream snipers and docking, DOCing, I think you mean doxing them, in-game universe, everyone will be able to see exactly where they are and the bases and security measures. Yeah, they'll get good.
Yeah, I think that's a disadvantage of streaming.
Yeah.
Like you're either going to have to decide if you want to stream and show that kind of stuff, or if you want to only stream if you're doing things that aren't crucial. But it's just a reality of broadcasting yourself across the world, I think.
It's been...
and it's really not specific to server meshing. Like, that's a problem right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to get worse. But the other thing is, I think CIG is also going to have more safe spaces for players in general by then. Like, more places where you can, like, buy a hab and make a hab out of in a town where no one's going to be able to mess with it except for you. And or, like, a business location inside of a building. Or build a... even CIG talked about with base building. Like, you can build a base in a very protected area. You'll have to pay the taxes for it, but no one can touch you. Like, you have a planetary shield, and no one's going to be able to bomb you. It's going to be you're going to be invulnerable. So there'll be a lot more of a, play around in the sandbox sort of situation. So streamers can have that going for them. So
a lot of
the
people
are
aren't
going to give their favorite streamers max reputation with the UE military. And so if you mess with Space Tomatoes base, the Krugeri is going to come into orbit, and Admiral Bishop is going to take it personally.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I'm also kind of a problem for UEE. So,
Axis, you were saying something?
Yeah, reputation is unfortunately going to follow ne'er-do-wells and people in the back alleys because it ties to everything. This is part of server meshing that's coming. Probably pretty soon. And a lot of people keep forgetting this. It's going to happen, folks. Do bad things.
Yeah.
People won't want to do anything with you.
Even NPCs. Like your bad reputation is going to track with you. Reputation is going to matter a lot. And I think a lot of people who currently are like, I'm just going to I'm going to get my ganking alt, and I'm going to go gank all of these streamers. And it's like, your ganking alt is not going to be able to get any money, and if your regular peaceful alt is sending your ganking alt money, I hate to say this, but the game can track that. Just like today, if you start sending money to, like, a foreign power that's hostile to your country could probably see that, and you'll probably get in trouble for it. Same kind of idea. So it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm just going to send my brother, who's a mass murdering psychopath who's running across the country, killing everyone he sees. I'm just going to send him, $1,000 through Western Union. That's going to really do well in terms of my reputation with the federal government.
People also miss that while being able to attack other players and do all of that kind of stuff is part of this game, and it should be a part of this game, that doesn't mean that you're also going to be avoiding the reputation impacts that has on you in the overall community outside of the game. If you make content that bases around attacking people, you can do that. It's just that people are going to be less likely to, associate with that. Yeah. And that goes beyond the game at times too. You got to think about the way that you're impacting other people's gameplay, and it might be that it's meant to go that way, but at the end of the day, it's still other people's gameplay, and they're going to react because of it.
Yeah, there's a long tirade I could go on about how I think a lot of people are misunderstanding the small shoebox that we have, that is the Stanton system, and comparing it to the kind of game that CIG wants to make and the scales. And because the reality is you're probably not going to run into a lot of players unless you're absolutely planning to, because CIG wants you to run into NPCs. So most of the time you're going out trying to be pirating. If you're like a legitimate pirate, you're just going to, like, when I say legitimate pirate, I mean people who's like, you're there to steal stuff from people and sell it. You're probably going to be doing that to NPCs, not to players. And if you're just like, well, I only want to pirate players, you're not going to survive, because there just won't be enough players to survive unless you're really, really good or know exactly where things are. So, this isn't going to be Rust in Space. It's not going to be Eve. It's going to be a lot more managed than those things. So, all right. 2 questions. How will they treat dynamic events when there are potentially thousands of players online in the same area? And also, why is Tomato's voice so smooth? Inquiring minds want to know, why do you have such a sexy voice, Tomato?
tomatoes.
Tomatoes.
Eat tomatoes, kids.
Eat tomatoes.
Eat them as children. It makes your gives you a smooth throat. I don't know.
Whoa.
Yeah. Never mind. Forget about that.
And clipped.
How they can treat dynamic events? They've already said. I mean, Elliot's all but shouted it from the rooftops. Instancing. Events will be instanced. There will be a limit. And you go to an area, you go to an IAE, and the entire community of Star Citizens at IAE and 2957, you're not going to be able to see everyone there. There'll be a hard limit of who you can see, and then there'll be layers of instancing of what's going to be in that area. And it's only going to be in that region or in that landing zone that you go into, and you won't notice it when you transition into the zone. You might see a couple ships pop out of existence when you do that, and it'll be like, huh, kind of weird, but it'll be IAE, so like all these ships will be going in and out and stuff like that. So yeah.
And like the whole idea of thousands of people, and it's like that's at a point when the overall shard population is so incredible. I don't really see the necessity of worrying about that, because that's so far on down the line where that's going to be a problem, because the dynamic server meshing is really going to mitigate a lot of these problems, only to a certain point, but that point's going to be really high. But at the same time, the like IAE is not meant to be how it is right now. IAE has multiple satellite locations across the universe, as well as one central location in the Keel system on what's that, Severus, and I forget the name of the city. So the IAE that you go to, okay, that's the one in the Stanton system. There's also going to be a satellite location in this system, and that system, and that system. There'll be a dozen different satellite locations that you can visit to go to IAE along with the main location. And so you're not going to have the entire server population converging on one location for the event. And there's going to be other events going on, and it's called Ray's guide did a good job of explaining it, but you have the problem of absolute concentration and absolute dispersion. And that's what server meshing and the replication layer for, to mitigate those two issues. And that's why events are, you're not going to have absolute concentration of an event, because IA is going to have multiple sites, and not everybody's going to be converging on Orison for Siege of Orison, because dynamic event of whatever else is going to be going on 5 systems away. And so some people are going to be going to this event, and you'll have concentration of however many hundreds of people, but several hundred other people will be concentrating in a different area. And that's going to be how things are maxed out. But it's not going to be, you're not going to have an entire shard converging on a single location. And it's designed that way.
Yeah. And even then, I think still, even if they do, they'll always have that option of instancing, because it'll be so seamless. Yep. Where like you land at a spaceport and it's busy, you hop on that train, you go through there. That's a different object container. That train is a different object container from the area, and they can transition into a different like layered instance server. And we know that they want to do instance servers for events. So like you'll be able to have 100 or the maximum population you possibly can in the Siege of Orison event, and it'd still run fine, because they're going to spin up an entire server just for Siege of Orison. And that makes sense as it's going to be a cost. Yeah. But you expect people to go to the event. That's why you have that. So, yeah. And splitting all the different regions, kind of tailing into this. I'm going to, Axis, did you have anything to add to this, by the way? No? Okay. This is a question from C. McD on YouTube, who asks, in the sitcom, server meshing was demoed via LAN with very little latency. What will have to change to get that to work with internet latencies? This sounds like a very hard problem. Yes.
Regional shards.
Yeah.
Right now, my latency to the U.S. servers is 90 to 100, because I live in Idaho, and the U.S. servers are in the East Coast. But when they have U.S. servers that are in Washington, Seattle, my ping will be 20. And, that's the way of it. That's why the whole, single shard thing No, even if everybody in 10 years is on fiber optic internet, which isn't going to happen, it's the latency is, you're gonna want to play in your regional shard, and they're going to encourage that. You can still play across shards, but you're going to have some latency. But for the replication layer and the servers and the entity graph, there will be zero latency between those things, because they'll be co-located, but co-located for a shard for Western US and Los Angeles, Western US and Seattle, Austin, Texas, Chicago, what have you. It just like every other game, and
the problem comes down to the biggest problem that CIG has is the fundamental laws of the universe, which is you cannot surpass the speed of light. No one can. So latency is going to be the issue everywhere. And there are ways you can mitigate it. Like I think Blizzard, the way it does for like Overwatch, is everyone's delayed. So like every single person has a delay as a several millisecond delay built in, so that no matter what their latency is, they're all evened out in the gameplay. So it feels smooth, even though it's delayed. You're actually not playing at the same rates. But as a result, it's not as responsive. Like, it's not going to feel as like sudden. And when you hear people talk about, you'll hear some people talk about like, well, X game gets 120 FPS for its server for like this competitive esports shooter game. And it's like, yeah, because it's a competitive esports shooter game where they're going to have people in the same room playing against each other. You're never going to have that with Star Citizen. That's why they're only shooting for like 30, because they want to try to kind of performance it. So, yeah. I wanted to get that because it kind of tied into the whole question as well. Giga Ugvala on YouTube asks, this might be stupid, but what happens in dynamic meshing when one server goes down and the other stays on? You won't be able to transition into that other server.
Yeah. Another server will pick up that spot.
I'm sorry, say the question again.
So if like you have two servers, say I've got ship A and ship B. Ship A is in one server, ship B is in the other server, and the ship B server goes down, but ship A server's still up, and they're trying to fire at each other. What's going to happen?
Another server will pick it up?
Yeah, another server will pick up ship B.
The adjacent server. If you remember from the server meshing demo, the adjacent server is you're replicating the things on the server, so you can see over here. And so if you have A, B, and C, and you're in C and they're in B, and B goes down, then C is still replicating what B is doing. That's why they showed this in the demo. And so that way, if B goes down, C already is able and ready to pick up the workload for B, and vice versa for A. That's why the whole neighboring, it isn't server C is only simulating what's on server C. Server C is also simulating, or the replication layer is replicating what's on B to C as well for that purpose, as well as for the transition of entities across. The firing of a gun. That's why it's lossless.
Replication layer is the admin that is controlling everything. It is the puppet master that holds all of the things. It's the guy in the mailroom who's sending everything out at the right time. But they have all of the information. So if B goes down, all that information that was on B was still in the replication layer, and it just has to be passed to a new server, or either a replacement or another takes over, or whatever. So, but that's why dynamic meshing 2 is so complicated, because what are the parameters of that? Where do you do these things? How does it pop up? What are the limits of what they can do? They don't know yet. So they need to do to add that, and that'll make it cheaper, even more cheaper for them to do it, and also better performance for everybody. So, all right. I'm going to ask this next question from Twitch. Joe Join Space says, my concern is how reliable can the service be while using any commercial server farm like Amazon? It's like using Apple for efficiency and Microsoft for stability. As a kind of a joke is the last one. Amazon Web Services runs like half of the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can't depend on them, I don't know.
Yeah, like the every so often they'll go down. Like maybe once every couple of years they'll go have a major problem and an outage, and when you do, like half of the internet goes down. Like, AWS is really reliable as a service. Yeah, Netflix runs on AWS. Maverick69 asks, do you feel that this will scale well once we push past 2 systems? How many servers do they need to keep spooling up once the players spread out across the universe? Tree.
The Dynamics 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dynamic V1 is what will allow for that. Dynamic V2 is really, it's almost, V2 is almost superfluous, really, in terms of what we need right now. But yeah, with Dynamic V1, where they already have the object container entity zones set up and they can scale it up as much, a lot. And it really just goes up and down based off of the number of entities in a region, which is largely based off the number of players in that region, in that entity zone. So, the Dynamic V1 will get us a long ways. I don't think it's going to take years for them to tackle Dynamic V2. Dynamic V1 will really get us to where we need to go for a lot more systems. And it's it's not one of those things that I worry about, just because with Dynamic V1, you can break down Stanton into literally dozens, if not hundreds of servers if they wanted to. It's really just a matter of they need to find out where that upper limit is on how the replication layer scales up. Yeah.
This one's for Space Tomato. I'm going to step away for a few months here. To Space Tomato, with your talk with the network engineers yesterday, what was the biggest takeaway from your podcast and the Q&A?
Biggest takeaway. I think for me, when it comes to server meshing, the most confusing thing is how special it really is, because there's so much. Everybody's a little bit biased when they're talking about it. Some people will say, it's been done before. People will do it. It's no big deal. Some people will be like, yeah, this is the most amazing thing that ever happened to gaming. And to hear them from their position come out and say, I've never seen anything like this. I've not seen this attempted in this industry before. This is, they specifically focused on microservices and how this was a change to more of a microservice way of running a game as opposed to a monolithic form, which is what games generally do, and how that's something that other parts of the industry or other industries in networking have moved on to microservices, and that CIG is kind of trailblazing a little bit in that. But just hearing from their perspective how actually monumental this technology was, not just a Star Citizen, but as a technology itself, I think was pretty cool to hear.
Awesome. I got that last tail bit, but I think it's something you already mentioned before about like they're kind of look at just the technology as a whole rather than just
what they have to say about it being so significant. It means a lot more to hear it from somebody in the industry, somebody who works with this kind of stuff, than somebody else like me who's just excited about it.
All right.
Yeah, Paul said it a million times that nothing they're doing is new. The way they're doing it is new. Mm-hmm. And no one has combined all these pieces together in this sort of combination. It's not a thing, but the individual pieces have been done before.
Yeah, this is a peanut butter and chocolate moment where both have been around for a while, but someone had the bright idea let's put them together, sort of situation. And the problem is that all of this stuff is expensive, requires a lot of research and development. It requires a lot of painful working out and playing through. But the one thing that's pretty consistent about Chris Roberts is that he's insane. And if you give him the kind of money to do R&D projects, he will do R&D projects, and he'll gather other people who are as insane as him to decide to do this together. Because this is a tech guy's dreams project, because there are people who are working on this who will probably write papers on how they get this done. There'll be JDC moments. There might be, even other things. Depending on how well these technologies work, they might be able to. They're tackling old problems with unique solutions, which may kind of transition beyond that. So, this is actually really leads to another question, which is from Benjamin Frick, who asks, once CIG figures this out, do you think they will license the tech out, like server meshing and replication layer? You think so, Axis?
Yeah, I definitely think so. They'd be foolish not to. Honestly, if they can patent it, if they can find a way to license it at least, to where it's and sell it to people, but keep the copyright for the royalties, that would definitely be beneficial to their bottom line and any other projects they work on through the studio.
I think it really depends on CIG's ability to support, because if any CIG is going to license anything, they have to support it as a game. And they've said in the past they don't want to do that. I could see them doing it if they think there's enough call for it and if they think they can make enough money from it. Which isn't always the case. This is going to sound weird, but Bungie built their own engine for Halo. It's called the Blam engine, and Blam engine has been around for quite a while. In fact, there's only one other game that I know of that's built off of Blam engine that's not a Halo game, which is Stubbs the Zombie, which was created by a bunch of devs who were ex-Bungie employees and who knew how to use the engine, so they just licensed the engine. But the fact that it was made a big deal that Stubbs the Zombie used the same engine as Halo, but even after that, Blam never went anywhere. It's just the engine that runs Halo, and then they just took that engine, the Blam engine, and they turned it into the Slipspace engine, which is the one that runs all of the modern Halo games. So like, there may be calls for the Star engine by other people, but I don't know if it'll ever be, Unreal in terms of, or even like the next CryEngine, because that would require not only support, but helping to teach people how to look at the code and require better tools and UI. There's a lot of processes to that. And so really
this is why CIG has built their own engine, because getting someone to support you to do something like they're doing would be impossible. No company that owns an engine and licenses it out and supports it would ever have the manpower to be able to. Yeah.
Listen, I saw an Unreal Engine 5 demo where they made these amazing things, and you're totally wrong. Listen, like my brother's uncle makes an indie game with Unreal 5, and he just see all the stuff they're doing. It looks 10 times better than Star Citizen, and they can do all the things that Star Citizen does, but better. Trust me, bro.
Don't you have YouTube Tree?
Yeah. I think they could do it eventually. It's just a matter of, is it a priority? Because I think that Star Citizen is going to make them so much money, over the coming years, that it's not going to be, is the juice worth? Is the tomato juice worth the squeeze? And I don't think it's going to be worth the squeeze. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be worth the squeeze for a while, because they have to get the engine to a point where it's worth going and doing that, and they have so much more work to do to build everything and get it functioning to make it licensable, because as a product it's not licensable right now, because they're still supporting themselves. You can't you can't fill someone else's cup is up if yours is only half full, and so they don't have the bandwidth, and they'd have to hire a lot more people, and it's like, no, that's not a priority. They're still building the game. Now 5-10 years down the road, maybe, but not anytime soon.
And maybe when CIG is done messing with their engine, they can set Frankfurt down and go, Frankfurt, you're going to become new Crytek. Go. And they might, because those are people who have that kind of experience. But they have so many things they want to do with the engine that it would just slow them down to have to make it so that your average Joe, you basically make the CryEngine editor, but with Star Engine. That is like build me an operating system kind of levels of complicated, that everyone can use. So, Unreal Engine 5 is draw dropping awesome, but it doesn't do universe scale object containers. Unreal Engine 5 is a fantastic tool, and it can do some really cool things with very, very, like, it means that, don't get me wrong about that joke, like Unreal Engine 5 can make some impressive looking games with basically no knowledge in how it works, with a very basic knowledge of how it works, because it can support some amazing graphics and high textures. The problem is what was that game? Days Gone? No, not Days Gone. The Day Before.
Oh God.
The Day Before, which was a series of vertical slice technical demos done with Unreal Engine 5, and everyone said this looks amazing. And it's like, yeah, because that's what you can do with Unreal 5. Like, that's what you can do. You can make things look really good, but actually making a game out of it can be a little harder because they're going to find some edge cases, but it's going to look great. There's lots of like little tools and stuff like that you can use as kind of a newbie. You can just kind of plug and play, but you'll find the upper limits, and it's not going to be best for everything. So, yeah. All right. Pace Cape asks, will we have ground vehicle racing? We used to have ground vehicle racing.
They tried it.
But yeah, I think we will. They actually said that
It'll come back.
Monthly report, they said they were going to do ground vehicle racing for Arena Commander.
They've got hover bikes now.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Like they used to do this stupid smoke system. You had to like drive to the scramble races, which was awful. Racing needs to be just like any other racing in the game right now. It needs to have its own track. That's what it is. You just can't do those kind of randomly generated tracks. All right. We've got a handful of questions left. Repeat Metic asks, will the implementation of the server meshing and replication layer increase the production of future solar systems? Increase the speed up production of future solar systems? Yes.
I think he means rolling them out per year.
They have been holding back development on additional star systems until server meshing is a thing, because it doesn't make sense to put all that effort into something that you can't add to the game. That's been the thing for a lot of things. But so that's one of the things that Nazareth and I have been wondering about is, hey, we're supposed to be getting a big roadmap update here in the next month or so, and are we going to start seeing some long-term additions in regards to getting back to work on Nyx and another star system? Because the star systems are announced, and so they won't be unannounced when they start work on them. Nyx, they did a little bit of exploratory work in 2021, and so when it gets back into production, it'll be on the progress tracker. And how confident they are in server meshing will determine when they start putting together star systems, because they have all the tools. Shameless plug, Naz and I did a big old podcast segment on all the tools that they had developed for making points of interest and building star systems, the different things for essentially the geography of it. And they have put a lot of effort into these tools, and they've been polishing those tools with the development of Stanton and now Pyro. But the real test of how quickly they can actually, from start to finish, will be the next star system. And we won't. Whether that starts this year or not, we don't know.
Yep. The thing about that helps with Nyx is that Nyx is a landing zone that already exists, and a lot of people are like, it was taken out in X day, so many years ago. They obviously haven't been updating it, and the answer is no, they have been. We've been seeing screenshots of them in the monthly reports. Like when they added all of the medical clinics to all of the other stations, they added the medical clinic. Like when Grimhex got its medical clinic, so did Levski. So they have been all of the lighting stuff. When they did all the lighting for the Habs, they showed off lighting for the Levski Habs, which is a different kind of style from all the other ones. In fact, the day that they took out Delamar, they actually had a patch notes update of them fixing a bunch of stuff with Levski and Delamar. So they've still been working on it in the background whenever they had a chance to. So that's a good example of something that they could, because the asset's already there, it might make sense for them just to kind of roll into Levski because they already have the hard stuff done. So
yeah, the landing zone for Nyx is basically, been kept up, but Nyx is, other than that, 2 very large asteroid belts. Well, they have a tool for generating different types of asteroids and for making procedural asteroid fields. They have the tools for doing the great big giant gas clouds, which is what Nyx is.
Nyx is.
It's basically nebula. In a nebula.
Yeah.
They have the tools for building the planets. We know that. We've seen that a million times. The asteroid facilities are likely going to be built with the procedural locations tool, and those are in Nyx. Nyx is supposed to have abandoned UGFs. That's the procedural locations tool. I'm sure it'll have some, derelict outposts as well via Rastar. So it's all there. We've heard rumors that the tools aren't in great shape, but we know that they can use them because we've seen them build stuff with them. It's just a matter of, how much polish does a location require after it's produced from a tool is what they need to continue to work on.
All right, we've only got 4 more questions. There's 5 more questions because this is really quick. Someone has asked, like, what happens if I build a base in server A for this shard, and then Tree builds another base in the same location in server B? What will happen if you Tree go from server A to server B in your base, and now you're in that other person's? Will you be in that other person's base? Like, how will that work? And I actually think they've already answered this question, which is, at least initially, that base will exist on all servers.
Yeah.
So when you put it in all shards, because it's part of the replication layer. So when you go to a base that's built on, say, Daymar, and it looks like it's abandoned, you won't be able to interact with it at all unless you're on the server or on the same shard that thing was originally built on. So you might have a bunch of abandoned bases which you can't interact with, you won't see anything inside of, it'll just be there. You may even not even be able to get in. But there's going to be problems. So people will figure out how to do server hopping. We used to call them ghosting, where like you could go to the location, then log out in another server, then log into that server, and then you're in the middle of the enemy's base, and now you can just go around and do what you need to. There'll be things that have to figure that out. But as far as I understand, the way they initially planned on doing it is that bases will persist through all shards. But Tree, I don't know if there's anything else you can add to that, or Space Tomato.
No, it kind of it's like a version of instancing, kind of. I guess you'd say.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that.
It's one of those things where they're like, we don't really have an answer for that yet, and because I think a lot of that is because they don't even know how bases are going to work at the time when they was asked. So
the biggest solution is the size of the universe, and making the universe bigger. It's going to make it a lot harder for you to accidentally bump into somebody's base on a different shard.
Well, also, I think Jared's already pointed this out because someone else made a joke about like, oh, we're going to fill up the universe very quick. It's if every single person in Star Citizen bought a plot of land and on Daymar, you would still the active player base, it still wouldn't fill up the entire moon. Like there is lots of space in Stanton, let alone anywhere else. So.
Yeah, the amount of surface area on Hurston is greater than the actual surface area of all of Russia.
Yeah.
And Russia is mostly empty.
And the moons are all about the same surface area as India.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's huge. Like these places are not just small places. All right.
This
Benjamin
just in space is big.
Yeah. I could quote you that entire beginning of that book, but you get it.
Nice.
No capital. Benjamin Frigas. No capital combat ships until server meshing. Most likely not. We do have capital combat ships. We're going to have the Polaris, probably before server meshing, but we're not going to see massive capital ships until server meshing is in place, like the Idris, the Javelin, the Kraken, just because there's not going to be anything for them to do. And like the Idris, I'm forgetting the crew sizes, but I think the Idris itself right now is like half a server. Like there's no point until you can have this population up higher. So
it's weird how the development of the Polaris is probably going to coincide pretty closely with the release of server meshing.
Yeah, it's almost like
they've waited.
Yeah,
on working on capital ships specifically. Like they talked about that.
Yeah. Anyone address the crewing of a ship where you need 70 people to man those huge ships and server size of 100 people? Yeah, they have to increase the server size. And that's the reason why server meshing is important, because without server meshing, you can't.
A, for more people, and B, to have NPC crew to man those ships if you don't have enough people.
Even if they were to roll out the Liberator, which is one of the largest low crew capacity ships, you still have to have AI crew for some components of it, I think.
It's only 2 people. I think it's only 2 or 3 people.
Yeah, I think it's only 2.
But you still
have to have people to man the fighters on the deck, so that increases it to 5.
Easily, if not more, because you also have the internal deck, which you can add more people to. So,
sorry.
Last question from YouTube. Gruntling asks, do you think they'll start adding more players with tier 1 static meshing, or is that tier 2? There's no tier 2 static meshing, but yeah, 100%. They'll start adding more players if they can get away with it with the replication layer increasing. CIG is going to start jacking that player number up as high as they can. All right, let's do a little history lesson. Professor Shelley is here. Do you all know when we got 100 players plus per server?
Like 2 summers ago?
2 summers ago. It's 317.2 or 317.3, one of the two. It was the last one before 318. Yeah, it was
that 2, yeah.
And they just said, hey, we have better performance. Let's see if we can increase it. And some of those servers were up to 200 people in the server. They just took the brakes off to see where they could go, and they were able to get it pretty high. And that's with just improvements in terms of optimizations. If CIG thinks that they can get away with it with the dynamic or with the replication layer split, they'll drop 1,000 people in the server and see if it breaks. Like they have no problem with doing that. They've done it in the past, and they want to. They want to find out what the upper limit of people is in a single server with just the replication layer, without destroying the performance. So, yeah, but yeah. So definitely, I think you all agree with me that they're definitely going to increase the player cap with static 1. Probably.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's that meme image of Dr. Eggman like laughing while he's pushing the button? It's like, the button, the 2 button options. Like one is like green and one is red, and it's like do this or do this, and it's usually the guy who's sweating having to pick between 2. There's a version of that which is just Dr. Eggman laughing while he's pushing the red button. That's CIG. Increase the player cap and hurt the performance, or keep the player's cap smaller and not hurt the performance. CIG laughing as they push the more players button. Like that's just what they'll do. They don't care. They want as many people as possible as until they can until it literally breaks the game, and then they'll try to tier it back until it's good performance. So
yeah.
All right, and the last 2 questions. Northern Trooper asks, what do you think is stopping CIG from just having a Pyro on permanent tech preview channel? What do you think, Space Tomato?
It's not worth the money.
Just the money? Access?
Hype, too. I mean, letting people just sit on Pyro all the time is going to definitely take away from the launch of it eventually.
Okay. Access?
I definitely agree with that. They also have to test out other things. Like right now, they're testing out replication layer, right?
Mm-hmm. Tree?
No, I think that's the big thing is they spend their platform resources on the things that they need tested. If they don't need Pyro tested, then they're not going to put it up on servers, and that's when they are getting closer to release for it, I think we'll probably see a few more tests to allow them to, test out the things that have since been changed or updated. But yeah.
All right. Last question comes from Northern Trooper, who asks I'll save this for last because I think it was a very good one. What games are you looking forward to play in 2024? I'll start with you, Access. What games are you looking forward to this year? Not Star Citizen.
Well, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Okay.
Also, the brand new Star Wars Dark Forces that I mentioned earlier in the cast. I've heard of someone.
Go ahead, Axis. What were you saying?
I'm kind of debating some others, but that's it for now. Sorry, Trey.
I can answer Tree's question for you, and it's: do you like liberty? Do you want to stand for managed democracy? Do you like a cape? Do you think capes are cool?
I have a short list in chat. I want you to write these down because you're going to thank me. Basically, anything by Hooded Horse. First things first, February 8th is when Helldivers 2 releases, and I've been uber excited about that. Manor Lords by Hooded Horse is looking really great. Falling Frontier is still slated for a 2024 release, I believe. Looks incredible, again, by Hooded Horse. And then, what was the Menace? Which is being made by the same devs that did Battle Brothers. That's looking really cool. I'm very excited about that. Homeworld 3 is supposed to release in March, and so I'm super excited about that. I guess it was supposed to be early 2024, and they changed it now to maybe late, or it's open. But Star Wars Outlaws, I'm very interested and curious about that, so I'm excited to give that a try. I think those are the most prominent ones that I'm really looking forward to. But yeah. Oh yeah, and Hyperspace. Hyperspace, I guess, is supposed to go to early access this year.
Yeah.
We'll see. That's what they've been aiming for a couple of years. I wouldn't be surprised if it slips, but we'll fingers crossed. Hopium, stir some hopium into your liberty.
Yeah, it doesn't like the early versions of it were rough. It was very basic. Yeah. It was very basic and had a lot of problems. But it was as recently they've been starting to really improve graphically and performance. So, but remember, it's a game made by 2 people. Like it's literally 2 people. So that's the kind of thing that happens. Space Tomato. What's your game list for 2024?
Mine's pretty short. I'm interested in that Star Wars Outlaws game coming from Massive. Just seeing what they do with it. I like space games, and bringing in another mainstream space game is good for everybody. Actually, Ara is a new 4X strategy game coming from Microsoft, and it looks really cool. Looks like a nice mix of your classic ARA. And it looks like a nice mix, of like your classic 4X kind of gameplay, your Civ style stuff. It's actually coming from a studio that was made up in large part by people who made Civ 5. And so it's got that Civ blood in it, but then it's also got some very real-time strategy aspects to it where you can really get into the battles and see the specific units and what they're doing. So I'm interested in that. The Star Wars game too. Homeworld 3, I've never played a Homeworld game, but I like real-time strategy. I like space, so I'll give that a try. And I didn't really have too much else that I'm sure there's other stuff that's exciting to me, but I don't play that many games throughout the year, to be honest.
Yeah. I try to play more games, and I'm trying to stream more of non-Star Citizen stuff just because it's it's fun. But Space Marine 2, as Moriar pointed out, I forgot about it too. Space Marine 2 is coming out, which has got 3-player co-op, so I'm very excited about that.
Why'd they pick 3?
Because it's the story. It's because of story. Because they want to have that kind of dynamic with the 3, because it's like lieutenant and then like heavy weapons guy and like more like melee focused. Like they kind of the banter. You can even hear it in the like audio. Like they did it for that sort of idea. though.
Strike from the sky, brothers.
Well, you know what's going to happen. Someone's gonna hack it within the first week it's out and mod it so you can put like 30 people, just like what is that? Lethal Company or like that. You can do like 50 people in Lethal Company. Like something's gonna happen with that. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Space Marine 2. I'm looking forward to Helldivers 2. There's Hyperspace, which is I'm not like looking forward to but the Indiana Jones game that's coming out from Arcane, I think is who's doing it. And I like Arcane stuff, the people who did Dishonored and Prey,
Redfall,
and Redfall, yeah. But is it Machine Games who's doing it?
Doing what?
Doing the Indiana Jones game, but
I thought it was Arcane.
It might be both.
Somebody said Machine. Okay.
Yeah, it might be both because they both work for Bethesda. So they're both. I mean, they're both owned by Bethesda, who's owned by Microsoft. But I think it's like that siloing thing that's going on. So like they still answer to Bethesda. I don't know, but a lot of people saying Machine Games is doing it. I thought it was Arcane that was doing it, but yeah, Machine did Wolfenstein. So that's pretty. Yeah. If there's one group of people I would trust doing a game about punching Nazis, it would be the people who did Wolfenstein. So. Yeah, I mean, I'll probably see more games as they come by. I always like the little indie games. I'm a big fan of survival games, so I was looking forward to Enshrouded that came out, and then Pal World came out, and I haven't played it, but I bought it because I was like, this is exactly the kind of game I would lose thousands of hours in. Light No Fire. I don't know. That has no date yet, but I'm interested in seeing that. That's Hello Games Fantasy No Man's Sky. So. Yeah, that's pretty much all of I'm really looking forward to, but I'll probably find more in the future. But thank you for hanging out. Go ahead.
Last one, Gray Zone Warfare. I know there's several. Oh yeah, it looks cool. There's several people who cover Star Citizen that have mentioned it before. It looks really good. I'm very interested in that. And then it doesn't have a release date. Maybe it'll be 2024, but Warship Jolly Roger.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys have never...
That looked great.
Have you ever read that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you read the comic?
I didn't read the comic, no. But I know it's a small dev team who's doing it. So. Yeah,
small dev team. Looks super cool. And like, if you haven't read the comic, pick it up on your whatever Kindle enabled thing you have, because like all 6 episodes is like $9. I've really enjoyed reading it. I've even read parts of it to my son, like in character, and he just gets a kick out of it. But yeah, look up Warship Jolly Roger. Yeah.
And then and I was going to say, like, and Banner Lords is the thing I've been jonesing for, because I have my 2 addictions are survival games and colony sims. I love both of those. I don't know how to stream them properly because I'm not good at them. But Banner Lords is as a guy who grew up doing wanting to do medieval history stuff. That's just mwah. But build your own manor and defend it from bandits and deal with like geopolitics or the local politics of the fictional feudal nation you're in to go deal with those problems. I love that idea. I love that. So.
Anvil Empires is also looking good, and that's basically Foxhole but medieval.
Yeah,
and so I'm very curious about that.
All right, and of course I'm going to always hold out hope. Chat's been talking about it. I'll always hold out hope for a Titanfall 3, but I don't. The hope is dying. It is dwindling. So. With all that being said, thank you so much to Axis and Tree and Space Tomato for coming and joining me for this long stream. And make sure you check out Space Tomato at twitch.tv/Space Tomato Gaming, and then youtube.com/Space Tomato or youtube.com/Space Tomato 2 TOO. Tree, go check him out at Tree0311 on Twitch and YouTube. And Axis, it's Axis096 on Twitch and YouTube, and it's lowercase a on YouTube, on Twitch, and bigger case a on YouTube. So check them out. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And for those of you, I'm going to be who are watching this on, say, YouTube and Twitch, when we end this, I'll be transitioning over to just continue playing, because we still got 2 hours to stream, and that can still go up. And thank you again to Factor for sponsoring the stream. And yeah, like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.